In 1978, my mother was admitted to a university in Beijing. The day the acceptance letter arrived, my father was framed and sent to prison. In my previous life, she packed her bag and left while I was taking a nap. I ran barefoot into the rain, chasing after her until my voice went hoarse from crying, but no one looked back. At 5.5 years old, I burned to death on a clay bed. When my father returned from prison and saw the small grave mound on the slope, his hair turned white overnight. Meanwhile, she was in Beijing, married, a professor with a son and a daughter, living a life of dignity. She never came back to visit me. Reborn to this day, I no longer cry. One by one, I laid out the letters she had hidden in the wooden box's secret compartment, in front of the entire village. Chapter 1. I woke up because I was cold. The straw mat on the heated brick bed felt damp with mustiness, and the paper window covering rattled loudly in the wind. I opened my eyes, saw the soot yellowed beams above my head, and caught the scent of sweet potato porridge wafting over from the kitchen stove. I was dazed for a long time, and 1 second ago, I had been floating in midair, watching my father, George, kneeling in front of a small mound on the slope. Heavy snow weighed down his shoulders, and his black hair had turned completely white overnight. He kept murmuring over and over, "Alistair, Dad's back, Dad's back." No one answered him. Buried beneath that small mound was me. My name is Alistair. And I was 5.5 when I died. Now I'm alive again. I stared at the beam for what felt like dozens of breaths before I was sure I wasn't dreaming. I turned over, my short legs kicking off the corner of the blanket, and a chill crept up from the soles of my feet. It was autumn, the autumn of 1978. A woman's voice came from the kitchen. "Alistair, are you up? The porridge is ready." My heart clenched violently. That voice, I'd chased it for 5 years in my past life, and carried it with me for what felt like forever. No, not forever. I only lived 5.5 years, but after I died, I lingered as a spirit, watching for many years. I saw my father come back from prison and find my grave. I saw him sit beside it all night long. I saw that he never remarried, growing old and dying alone. I saw her, too, Grace, my mother. She was doing very well in Beijing. She married a university lecturer named Julian, had a son and a daughter, became a full professor, moved into a nice apartment, and people would greet her on the street as Mrs. Grace. On her resume, under marital status, she had written first marriage. No George, no Alistair. She had erased as father and son from her life. "Alistair," she called out again. I sat up and put my bare feet on the floor, the cold making me shiver. I took a few steps outside and lifted the door curtain. Crouching by the earthen stove was a woman in her early 30s, with 2 braids and a faded blue cloth apron tied around her. Her fingers were long and slender, her nails neatly trimmed. No other woman in this village had hands as well kept as hers. She was an educated youth, from the city. Before marrying my father, she had taught literacy classes at the production brigade. She was the most cultured person in the entire village. She looked up and smiled at me. "Come and eat." I looked at her face. In my past life, that face was my final memory. She laid me on the heated bed, patted my head, and said, "Mommy's stepping out for a bit. You go to sleep now." Then I heard the door close, and footsteps fading away in the yard until there was nothing. When I woke up, the house was empty. I ran out in just a thin shirt, barefoot all the way to the village entrance. It was raining. The autumn rain was as biting as knives against my skin. I ran and shouted, "Mom," until my voice gave out, leaving only a hoarse whisper. No one looked back. No one stopped me on the road, either. I don't know how I made it back home. All I remember is Grandma Lee holding me, my body burning like a piece of red-hot iron, and then, nothing. I died, at 5.5 years old, dead on a heated clay bed, 'cause of death, high fever from being caught in the rain, with no one to take me to a doctor. Now she's crouched by the stove, smiling as she calls me over to eat some porridge. That smile is exactly the same as in the previous life, gentle, proper, perfectly measured. Something suddenly occurred to me on that morning when she smiled and urged me to eat my porridge. She had already packed her bags. That brown faux leather suitcase should by now be stuffed at the very bottom of the wardrobe, weighed down by 2 quilts. Inside were her clothes, her documents, and those letters, the letters Julian had sent from Beijing. In them, he laid out their plan, how to distract my father, and the words, "Once you get your acceptance letter, come to Beijing, I'll have everything arranged." In the previous life, those letters went with her to Beijing, and no one ever saw them. It was only after I died and drifted beside her that I saw her take them out of the box and burn them, one by one. When she burned the letters, her hands were steady, and her expression was calm, like she was disposing of a pile of expired receipts. "Alistair, what are you daydreaming about? Come on." I walked over and sat down on the little stool. She placed the bowl of congee in front of me and added a spoonful of brown sugar. Brown sugar, this was a rare commodity in rural areas back In 1978, my father bought it for her, and normally she wouldn't even treat herself to it. Today, she added brown sugar for me. In my past life, I would have thought my mother was just showing me care. In this life, I know this is guilt before her departure, like putting down a little principle before taking credit. I picked up the bowl and took a sip. Sweet, I'm not crying. In my past life, I would have cried. Run after her sobbing, wailing for mama, crying until I got drenched in the rain and came down with a fever, crying until I died right there on the con. Not in this life. I set down my bowl and looked up at her. Mom, where's Dad? Your father went to the back mountain early this morning to cut bamboo. He said he wants to weave a basket for tomorrow's market in town. Going to the market, my heart tightened. In my past life, my dad ran into Cain while heading to the market. That bully, who terrorized the town, cursed out my mother in the foulest terms in front of everyone. My dad couldn't hold back. He threw a punch, landing it right on Cain's temple. The blow gave Cain a concussion, which was later assessed as a moderate minor injury. My dad was sentenced to 3 years. In my past life, I thought it was just an accident, but during the years I drifted after death, I saw the letters between Julian and my mother. One of the letters read, "I've already spoken to Cain. Tomorrow he'll go to the market and pick a fight with your husband. Given George's temper, there's no way he'll back down once he throws the first punch. Everything is arranged on my end. You can come without worry." Cain was bought off. My father being sent to prison was a setup, and the one behind it all, apart from Julian in faraway Beijing, is the woman in front of me, smiling as she adds brown sugar to my tea. I clenched my fist at 5.5. My hands were so small that my knuckles didn't even stick out when I made a fist, but I told myself, you have one day, from now until dark, before she grabs her suitcase and leaves while you're asleep. You have to get everything done. First thing, keep your dad from going to the market. The second thing was to get that stack of letters. The third thing was to make sure everyone saw her face. I finished the bowl of rice porridge with brown sugar, set the bowl down, and hopped off the stool. Mom, I'm going to find Dad. The back mountain is far. Don't go. Just stay here. I had already pushed the door open and run out. Her voice chased after me for a moment, then fell silent. I knew she wouldn't follow. She had too much to do. Check the luggage, hide the documents, shift the suitcase and the wardrobe to a more convenient spot. She was making final preparations for tonight's escape. She thought everything was under control. She thought her husband would go to the market at noon, run into Cain, get provoked, and be taken away. She thought her son was only 5.5, too young to understand anything. But she didn't know, her son had already died once. Chapter 2, The Back Hill. Wasn't far, just past a low dirt ridge on the September hillside. The greenery still held, bamboo groves rustled in the wind, like someone whispering. I trotted along, my shoes slapping and pattering on the muddy path. From far away came the sound of bamboo being chopped. Crack, 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 each stroke as steady as a pendulum. My dad, George, was crouching by the bamboo grove, a hatchet in his hand, trimming a felled bamboo. At 32, he had a dark, weathered face and broad shoulders. His hands covered in calluses from years of carpentry. He was known in the village as a master carpenter, making sturdy tables, chairs, and benches. People for miles around would come to him for custom furniture, but he was a man of few words. In my past life, I didn't have many memories of him. He was always working, either cutting timber in the back hills or planing wood at home. Sometimes he'd give me a hug, his big palm cradling the back of my head a little too tightly, squeezing my ear until it hurt. It wasn't until I was drifting as a spirit that I learned. During his 3 years in prison, he carved words into his wooden bed plank every single night. It was carved Alistair, carved with a fingernail. He doesn't know I'm dead. The day he got out of prison, he almost ran all the way back. I don't dare imagine the look on his face when he saw that little grave mound. Dad. I stood on the edge of the dirt ridge and shouted at him. He looked up, saw me, froze for a moment, and put down the machete. How did you get all the way out here? Where's your mom? She's at home cooking. I scrambled down the dirt embankment, lost my footing, and slipped. In a flash, he lunged over and caught me. His hands were rough, scraping my arms like sandpaper, but his grip was solid. Slow down. What if you fall and hurt yourself? He scolded me with a stern face. I threw my arms around his neck and wouldn't let go. I hadn't held him enough in my past life. He stiffened for a moment, probably unused to me being this clingy. Then he freed one hand to pat my back and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong, Dad? Don't go to the market today." He didn't catch on. "Don't go into town." I buried my face in the crook of his neck, breathing in the smell of sweat and sawdust. Why not? I promised the Zhangs I'd deliver their stools at the market today. I hadn't known this detail in my past life, but now I did. He wasn't just going to the market to sell things. He had an appointment. That was why he'd insisted on going. In my previous life. I had to find a way to keep him from going. "Dad, isn't our plane over by the cowshed?" "Plane?" He furrowed his brow, thinking. "No, I brought it inside yesterday. I saw it. It's pinned under that pile of wood by Uncle Victor's barn next door." I was lying, but I knew my dad's plane was his most prized possession. His master had passed it down to him, and he'd used it for over a decade. If he thought it was lost, he'd go looking for the plane first, and the trip to the market would have to wait. You sure? He put me down, and the look on his face changed. He took great care of his tools. I saw it. It's trapped under a post in the barn, and I couldn't move it. He didn't hesitate any longer, hoisted the bamboo he had cut onto his shoulder, and headed down the mountain. I followed behind. My short legs were struggling to keep up, so he glanced back, grabbed the bamboo with his other hand, and swung me onto his shoulder. Perched on his shoulders, I could see the entire village. Row after row of mud brick houses stood below, their roofs covered with drying sweet potatoes. In the distance, people were turning the soil in the fields, and beyond that lay the dirt road leading to town. In my past life, my father had walked that dirt road into town and met Cain. In this life, he would never take that road again, at least not today. After coming down the mountain, he headed straight for Uncle Victor's barn. Inside the barn, an old yellow ox was chewing hay, watching us with its big, wet eyes. My dad set down the bamboo and crawled into the barn, starting to dig around under the pile of wood. It's not here. He searched once, then turned back to glare at me. Are your eyes playing tricks on you? I saw it. I crouched at the barn door, pointing toward the corner inside. Over there, under that piece of wood. He went through it again, still nothing, but then Uncle Victor came over. Victor, a farmer in his 40s, he saw my dad rummaging through his cow sheet and quickly came to ask what was going on. My dad said the plane might be pinned under some wood. Victor said he had moved a few logs a couple of days ago and might have accidentally covered it. So the two men squatted down in the cow sheet and started moving the wood. Piece by piece, time ticked by. Slowly, I waited nearby. I knew the plane wasn't there. It was safely sitting in the toolbox at home. But I needed my dad to stay here, to waste the hours past noon, past the window when Cain would be waiting for him at the town market. After moving things for the better part of an hour, my father's face grew darker and darker. He turned to look at me, suspicion in his eyes. A 5.5-year-old couldn't possibly tell a flawless lie, but I was betting on how much he cared about that plane. If there was even a sliver of a chance, he would search every inch of the place. Really, Dad, I saw it. I lowered my voice. Like a child who had done something wrong, he stared at me for a few seconds, let out a sigh, and didn't press further. He turned to Uncle Victor and started talking about something else. A few planks on the roof of Uncle Victor's cow sheet had rotted, and Uncle Victor asked if he could help fix them. My dad took a look and nodded, and just like that, the plan to go to the market was naturally set aside. I sat on a rock outside the cow sheet, watching the sun climb higher little by little. It was almost noon. I had to do the second thing. I jumped off the rock and dusted the mud off my pants. Dad, I'm home. Slow down, he yelled from the barn. I broke into a run toward the house. When I reached the door, I stopped, peeking through the crack. The pot lid on the stove was letting out steam, but the main room was empty. My mom wasn't next to the stove. I pushed the door open and tiptoed toward the inner room. The large wardrobe in the inner room was made by my father himself. For cabinet doors, teakwood finished with tung oil. I pulled open the bottom door, pushed aside the quilt, pressing down on top. That brown faux leather suitcase was indeed there, exactly the same as in the previous life. I opened the suitcase. Inside, folded neatly, were a few pieces of clothing, a Dacron shirt, a pair of gray pants, and a pair of slightly worn cloth shoes. Beneath the clothes was an oilcloth bundle containing her identification documents and a craft paper envelope. Inside the envelope was a thick stack of letters. I pulled the letter out. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from hatred. In my past life, when I floated beside her, I watched her burn these letters at her home in Beijing. Her movements were practiced, as if she had done this many times before, cleanly erasing anything she didn't want others to see. The stationery had already yellowed with age. The signature at the bottom read Julian. I can't read. At 5.5, I haven't started school yet, but I don't need to know how to read. I have seen all of my past life. The first letter, Julian told her to study hard, saying he had already helped her get the review materials. The second letter, Julian said, once you pass the exam, come to Beijing. I'll be waiting for you here. The third letter, Julian said, George is not worthy of you. You've wasted so many years in the countryside. It's time to come back. The fourth letter, I've already said a word to Cain. He'll go to the market and stir up trouble with George, and with George's temper, there's no way he'll hold back. Once he throws the first punch, I'll handle the rest. Just bring your acceptance letter and come to Beijing. This letter is solid proof. She conspired with Julian to set a trap, making my dad hit someone so he'd go to prison, and then she could walk away clean. I folded all the letters carefully and stuffed them into my little backpack. Dad had sewn the backpack himself from scraps of fabric, with crooked, uneven stitches, ugly as hell, but sturdy. I put on my backpack, placed the suitcase back where it had been, pressed down the quilt, and shut the closet door. Then I stepped outside. I'm going to go see Granny Lee. Granny Lee lives at the east end of the village, 3 doors down. She's 67 this year and is a villager supported by the 5 Guarantees program. Her husband passed away young, and her son was lost in the Great Flood years ago. Now she lives all alone in a 1.5-room rammed earth house. In my past life, She was the only one who held me after I got caught in the rain and came down with a fever, with the whole village around. She was the only one who heard my cries. She ran out and took me back to her home. She used a traditional folk remedy to rub down my body and break the fever, staying up all night without a wink of sleep, but it didn't help. My fever was so high, and there was no doctor in the village. The nearest clinic was in town, 7.5 miles away. At over 60, she couldn't carry me that far. She held me in her arms and watched as, little by little, I slipped away. Later, when my father was released from prison, Granny Lee was the first to go find him. She threw herself at his feet, crying, and knelt there saying, "George, I'm so sorry. I couldn't save your Alistair." My father didn't blame her. He helped her up and said, "Auntie, thank you." Then he went up the slope alone. Every Qingming festival after that, Granny Lee would come burn paper offerings at my grave, 1,000 times better than my own mother ever did. I pushed open the gate to Granny Lee's yard. She was sitting on the doorstep, snapping green beans, squinting through her presbyopic eyes as she picked off the strings one by one. "Granny," she looked up, saw me, and her face immediately broke into a smile. "Alistair, have you eaten?" "I have." I walked over and sat down next to her. There was a heavily patched apron on her lap, and it smelled of smoky firewood. I leaned against her arm without saying a word. She glanced down at me, probably thinking I was acting a bit strange today. "What's wrong? You look so down." "Grandma," I looked up at her. "My mom is leaving." She paused, her hand holding the green beans. "What? My mom is leaving. She's going to college in Beijing. She's leaving tonight." Grandma Lee's eyebrows furrowed. "How do you know? Did your mom tell you?" "She didn't say it, but I know." Grandma Lee looked at me, probably unsure whether to take me seriously. When a 5.5-year-old says, "My mom is leaving," anyone would think it was just a child throwing a tantrum, but then I said something else. "Grandma, she's leaving and she's not coming back. She doesn't want me anymore." I said this very calmly. No crying, no shouting, no wailing at the top of my lungs. That scared Grandma Lee even more. She put down the green beans, pulled me into her arms, and murmured, "No, that can't be. How could your mother not want you?" But her arm tightened around mine. I knew doubt had crept into her mind, because news of Grace getting into university had already spread through the village. A female educated youth, admitted to a university in Beijing, while her husband was behind bars. Though my dad hadn't been locked up yet, rumors were already swirling. No, that wouldn't happen in this life. Kane hadn't succeeded, but Grace's desire to leave was real. "Grandma, can you come to my place tonight?" I leaned against her and whispered, "What did you come to my place for?" "To see me." She was silent for a moment. Then she patted my head and said, "All right, Grandma will come see you tonight." I stayed in her arms for a while, then stood up. "Grandma, I'm leaving now. Slow down. I've already run out of the yard." Next stop, the village entrance. Old Jean, the mailman, rides his bike from town every day around 2 or 3 in the afternoon to deliver letters. Today, he'll bring one particular letter, Grace's acceptance letter. In the previous life, my mom had already been waiting at the village entrance half an hour early. She knew better than anyone that the acceptance letter would arrive today, because Julian had told her in his letter. The letter will be sent out on September 16th, and it should reach you around the 18th or 19th. Keep an eye on the mailman. Today is September 19th. She was waiting for that acceptance letter, planning to leave as soon as she got it, but what she didn't know was that inside the envelope, along with the acceptance letter, Julian had slipped a private note. In the previous life, after getting the envelope, she opened it, quickly pulled out the private note, and hid it without letting anyone see in. This life, I'm going to get to the village entrance before she does. I'm going to deliver that letter to someone she would never want to see it. Uncle Arthur, Village Party Branch Secretary Arthur. Chapter 3. I waited at the village entrance for nearly 2 hours. The September sun was still quite harsh, squatting under the big locust tree at the village entrance. The back of my neck was burning from the heat. A few adults passing by asked, "Alistair, what are you doing squatting here all alone?" I said, "Waiting for the mailman." They just smiled and walked off. When a 5.5-year-old says they want to wait for the mail carrier, no one thinks much of it, but I never let my guard down for a moment. In my past life, my mom left the house around 1:30 in the afternoon, waited at the village entrance until a little after 2 to get the letter, then went home, acted like nothing had happened, and endured until my nap time. The problem now is, I'm not sure when she'll come to wait at the village entrance. I have to get there before her. As the shadow of the old locust tree slowly shifted from the west to the east, a figure finally appeared on the dirt road in the distance. Bicycle, the jingling of a bell. It's old Zhang. Old Zhang the postman was about 60, lean and weathered, riding a vintage 28-inch bicycle with an army green canvas mailbag strapped to the back. He was the only postman for miles around, delivering letters come rain or shine, and everyone in the commune knew him. Grandpa Zhang. I dashed up from under the big locust tree and ran straight toward him. He slammed on the brakes, stopping the bike, and grinned when he saw me. Alistair, you waiting for me right here? Grandpa Zhang, is there any mail for my family today? Your family? He rummaged through his canvas bag. Oh, yes, here's a letter for your mom. He pulled out a manila envelope with red lettering printed on it. I reached for it. This is a college acceptance letter, Lao Zhang said. Beaming, your mom got into a university in Beijing, the first one in the whole commune. Incredible, just incredible. He handed me the envelope. I took it with both hands. It was lighter than I expected. Thank you, Grandpa Zhang. I turned and ran off. Hey, slow down, don't fall. I didn't look back. I ran a stretch clutching the envelope, feeling my heart pound so hard it might leap right out of my throat. When I ducked into a side alley, I stopped and leaned against the wall to catch my breath. Then I looked down at the envelope in my hand. In my past life, this letter had reached Grace. She happily opened it right in front of the mail carrier, pulling out the acceptance letter to admire again and again. But with quick, precise movements, she quietly slipped out the sheet of paper Julian had tucked inside, folded it twice, and tucked it into her pocket. Her movements were so natural that no one noticed a thing. She was far too skilled at this kind of thing, hiding things, putting on an act, and silently disposing of secrets without batting an eye. But today, the letter is in my hands. I didn't open it. I held the envelope and turned it around. My Uncle Arthur's house sits right in the middle of the village, the largest home there, though that's not saying much. It just has one extra kitchen compared to the others. Arthur had been the village party secretary for 18 years, and his defining trait was his unwavering integrity. He was so upright that in my past life, after my father was sent to prison, Uncle Arthur helped tend to our family's grain fields, and when I died, it was Uncle Arthur who made the arrangements for my burial. He once told my father, George, it's my fault I didn't keep a better eye on Alistair. I let you down. He owes us nothing, yet he carries the burdens of every villager on his own shoulders. I need someone like that, someone with credibility, someone who would do the right thing. After seeing that letter, I ran to Uncle Arthur's door, stepped on the threshold, and nearly tripped. Uncle Arthur was splitting firewood in the yard. In his early 50s, he had a square face and thick eyebrows, the muscles in his arms flexing with each swing. Hearing my shout, he planted the axe into the stump and turned around. Alistair, what's wrong? You're in a panic. Uncle Arthur, my mom's college acceptance letter has arrived. I held the envelope high above my head, though given my height, that only brought it up to his waist. Uncle Arthur's eyes lit up instantly. Really? Grace got in. He walked over quickly, crouched down, and took the envelope. This is huge, amazing. What an honor for the whole village and commune. He scanned the writing on the envelope, his smile brighter than on New Year's Day. Then he tore open the envelope, standing nearby. My heart was racing to its limit. He pulled out the contents of the envelope. The first sheet was a bright red acceptance letter. Comrade Grace, you have been admitted to the Chinese Language and Literature Department of Beijing XX University. Uncle Arthur read it aloud, growing happier with each word, slapping his thigh and exclaiming with approval. But his hands didn't stop. He turned the letter over. A second sheet fell out, a piece of letter paper, folded twice. Uncle Arthur picked it up casually, thinking it was an attachment to the acceptance letter. He unfolded it and took a look. The smile froze on his face. I watched as his relaxed eyebrows furrowed, his lifted lips pressed into a line, and his hand holding the letter tightened slightly. He read it from beginning to end once more. Then he slowly raised his head and looked at me. Alistair, his voice changed. This letter, have you read it? I shook my head. I don't know how to read. That was the truth, but the look Uncle Arthur gave me grew complicated. He was probably hesitating whether a 5.5-year-old child delivering this letter to him was a coincidence, or, Uncle Arthur, what does the letter say? I asked, tilting my head up to look at him, my voice as innocent as could be. He didn't answer me. He folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope along with the acceptance notice, and sealed it shut. Then he stood up and took my hand. Come on, let's go find your mother. His strides were long, and I had to half-trot to keep up. As we left the yard and headed toward my house, we ran into someone along the way. Grace. She was hurrying toward the entrance of the village. She had come out to get the mail, but unfortunately, she was a step too late. Seeing Uncle Arthur holding my hand, she hesitated for a moment. Brother Arthur, Grace. Uncle Arthur stopped, his expression serious. Your acceptance letter has arrived. Grace's eyes lit up, but only for a second. She saw the envelope in her Uncle Arthur's hand, then she saw his expression. Her face changed, a flicker of panic, like a ripple on water, quickly suppressed by composure. That's wonderful. Thank you, Arthur. She reached for the envelope. Uncle Arthur didn't Give it to her, Grace. Come over to my place. There are some things we need to clear up. His tone was calm, but it left no room for refusal. Grace's hand froze in midair. She glanced down at me. I was looking back at her. Her eyes met mine. In that instant, I had no idea what she saw. Maybe the innocent wonder of a 5.5-year-old, or maybe something else entirely, but she quickly looked away. All right, let's go have a talk. She smiled and followed Uncle Arthur. I followed too, no one thought. It was odd for a 5-year-old to tag along. As I stepped into the courtyard of my Uncle Arthur's house, I glanced back at the road behind me. The sun was still directly overhead. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. Cain was probably waiting for my dad at the town market by now, and he'd be getting anxious when no one showed up. What he didn't know is that his target wasn't coming today, and his buyer, Julian, far away in Beijing, had even less of an idea that the letter he'd written was at that very moment in the hands of a village party secretary. Everything is moving at my own pace. At 5.5 years old, for the first time, I felt my heartbeat was steady. Chapter 4. In the main room of Uncle Arthur's house stood a square 8 table, on which sat an enamel mug and an open pack of cigarettes. Uncle Arthur's wife, Aunt Zhao, brought in 2 bowls of water, spotted Grace, said you're here, Grace, and then left. Uncle Arthur sat on the wooden bench across from the 8 immortal table and placed the envelope on it. I sat on the threshold, feet dangling in the air, swinging them quietly. Grace, Uncle Arthur spoke first. Getting into college is a good thing, an honor for the whole village, but he pulled the letter, folded twice, out of the envelope, unfolded it, and slid it to the center of the table. What is this? Grace's eyes fell on the paper. I saw her fingertips flinch ever so slightly. A tiny movement, as if pricked by a needle, but instead of reaching for it immediately, she tilted her head a little and looked at the words on the page. She must have recognized Julian's handwriting. Then she spoke. Brother Arthur, this is from an old classmate of mine, the one who used to help me with my schoolwork. Julian, I think I've mentioned him. He's a teacher in Beijing. Her tone was calm, even tinged with a hint of a smile. He was just telling me about how things are at the school, and that the admission notice had arrived, so I should get ready. There's nothing else to it. Uncle Arthur didn't say a word. He picked up the letter and read it out loud, word for word. Grace, the admission letter will arrive in a day or two. Once you receive it, head straight to Beijing. I've already arranged things on George's end. Cain will go and stir up trouble with him, and given George's temper, he won't be able to hold back. Once he throws the first punch, I'll handle the rest. Don't you worry about a thing. Just leave it all to me. After finishing the letter, Uncle Arthur placed the sheet of paper on the table. The main room fell silent for a few seconds. He looked up at Grace and asked, Grace, let me ask you something. Is Cain really Cain? Grace's lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. This morning, Cain came to the village and stood outside George's house cursing at him. It was little Alistair's crying that finally drew people over. I went to take a look and chased Cain away. Uncle Arthur's voice was barely a whisper, but every syllable landed like a hammer blow. Tell me, what exactly was your old classmate trying to accomplish by setting Cain on George? Grace's face went pale for a split second, but she recovered in a flash. Brother Arthur, you've got it wrong. Her voice softened, trembling with a hint of grievance. Julian was probably just talking. He knew Cain and George had history, and he was worried something might happen to George. So he told Cain to go looking for trouble instead. Uncle Arthur cut her off, his brows knitted together, the wrinkles on his face carved as deep as ravines. Grace, let me ask you something. Answer me honestly. Are you trying to get George into a fight so he ends up in jail, and you can leave? As these words were spoken, the air in the main room seemed to freeze. Grace lowered her head. She didn't speak right away. I sat on the threshold watching her profile, her expression shifting rapidly, flustered, aggrieved, calculating, weighing her options. I could almost see the gears turning in her mind. Then she started crying. The tears came at just the right moment. Brother Arthur, you have no idea what my life has been like all these years. Her voice began to tremble. I was a city girl, sent to live in this place as a young woman. It's been over 10 years now. It's not that I don't want to make a good life here, but look at this village. Look at this home. George is a good man, but he's just a carpenter, stuck on a few acres of land with his planes and saws. His whole life, I got into college, I have a chance to leave, I want to go. She cried louder and louder. You all think I'm heartless, but has anyone ever considered my suffering? I've spent over a decade here, my entire youth wasted. Finally, an opportunity comes along. I don't want to miss it. She looked up, tears streaming down her face, at Uncle Arthur. I know I did wrong, but I never meant to harm George. Julian, he just came up with an idea. I didn't agree. You didn't agree, Uncle Arthur slapped the letter on the table. The letter says, just bring your admission letter and come to Beijing. Was he joking around? You received this letter. Did you write back? Grace was choked into silence. Of course she had written back. The letter was hidden in the false bottom of the wooden trunk where she stored her luggage. Not the letters Julian had written to her, but the drafts of her replies to him. But I didn't take those drafts out with me. I kept something in reserve, because I need this to Unfold layer by layer. Today, let Uncle Arthur see Julian's letter first, so he knows someone is trying to harm my father. As for how deeply my mother was involved, wait until tonight, wait for her to reveal herself. Uncle Arthur stared at Grace for a long time. He was an upright man, but not made of stone. Before him sat a woman, her shoulders shaking with sobs as she spoke of over a decade of suffering and her desire to see the world beyond. He wavered. I saw his expression soften. Just a fraction. Grace saw it too. She wept even more bitterly. Brother Arthur, I beg you, please don't tell George about this. Let me tell him myself. Let me explain it to him properly. Uncle Arthur opened his mouth as if to say something. I stood up from the threshold. Uncle Arthur. My voice wasn't loud, but the main room was small, and everyone heard it. Both adults looked at me at once. I walked over to the Eight Immortal table, but I was too short to reach the top and had to tilt my head back. Uncle Arthur, when King came to our house this morning to curse at us, he said a lot of nasty things. Did that person send him? Why does that person want to hurt my dad? I spoke very slowly, word by word. A 5.5-year-old child had asked the most devastating question in the simplest words. Uncle Arthur looked at me, his eyes reddening. He crouched down to my eye level. Alistair, Uncle Arthur won't let anyone hurt your dad. And what about Mom? I asked, looking at him. Doesn't she want me anymore, either? Grace's crying stopped abruptly. She looked at me, tears still on her face, but her expression frozen. I didn't look at her, I only looked at Uncle Arthur. Uncle Arthur, Mom's suitcase is already packed. It's at the very bottom of the wardrobe. She's leaving tonight. Uncle Arthur's pupils suddenly constricted. He stood up and turned to Grace. Grace, is this true? Grace's lips quivered a few times. She was speechless. A 5.5-year-old child had just torn away her last shred of dignity. She didn't cry anymore. She just sat there, head bowed, wringing her hands. Uncle Arthur was silent for a long time, then he spoke. Grace, I won't stop you if you want to go. College is a good thing, and the country needs talent. But, he pointed at me, you need to sort things out with your child. You need to make things clear with George. You can't be sneaky about it, and you certainly can't let anyone scheme against George. His voice was not loud, but it carried the precision of a scale, able to weigh what mattered. Grace nodded. Her nod was very slight, as if she had little strength left. Uncle Arthur put away the acceptance letter and the other note, tucking them into his jacket pocket. I'll hold on to the acceptance letter for now. Tonight, when George comes back, you can talk face to face. I'll be there to bear witness. He finished speaking and then looked at me. Alistair, come home with your uncle, Brother Arthur. Grace suddenly looked up. That letter, could you? No. Uncle Arthur cut her off before she could finish. He took my hand and led me outside. When we reached the gate of the courtyard, I looked back over my shoulder. Grace was still sitting on the wooden bench, her figure tucked into the shadow of the main hall. What was she thinking about? I don't know, and I don't care anymore. In her past life, all the things she cared about, Julian, Beijing, college, a new life, every single one mattered more to her than I did. There was a scale in her mind, and I, her 5.5-year-old son, had never once made the other side go down. Uncle Arthur led me by the hand down the village path. The sun was leaning west. Someone was calling out to their ox in the fields, and a dog dozed at the foot of a wall. Alistair, Uncle Arthur suddenly looked down at me. How did you know your mother packed the suitcase? I thought for a moment. I saw it. When did you see it? Around noon today. I went home to get something and saw Mom packing a suitcase. Half true, half false. Uncle Arthur didn't ask any more questions, but he gave my hand a slight squeeze. I knew he felt for me, but his remorse at this moment was far from enough. That evening, after my father came home, that was when the real storm hit. I had to shield my father through that storm, to stop him from raising his hand against anyone, to keep him from falling apart. Don't let him face it alone. In his past life, he faced everything alone. He spent 3 years in prison alone, came back to face his son's death alone, and grew gray hairs alone. In this life, he has me by his side. Chapter 5. My Uncle Arthur took me home, but Grace didn't come back with us. She stayed at Uncle Arthur's place until nearly dusk, though no one knew what they talked about. Later, when Aunt Zhao came out to feed the chickens, she glanced at me as if she wanted to say something, then thought better of it, shook her head, and went back inside. I sat in the yard, waiting for my dad to come home. The sun sank behind the mountains, turning the clouds on the horizon a blazing red. Chimneys in the village began to smoke, and someone was calling the children in for dinner. I heard footsteps. It was my dad. He came back from Uncle Victor's with a few repaired wooden slats on his shoulder, the legs of his trousers caked with mud. As soon as he entered the yard, he saw me sitting on the stone steps. What are you sitting around here for? Where's your mom? Mom's not home. He frowned slightly, leaned the wooden strip against the wall, and bent down to scoop a ladle of water from the water vat to wash his hands. If she's not home, where did she go? To Uncle Arthur's place. He grunted an acknowledgement without giving it much thought. After washing his hands, he went into the kitchen to take a look. There was leftover porridge from lunch and a few steamed cornmeal buns in the pot. He warmed up the porridge for me, then broke apart the buns and ate them himself, sitting at the edge of the stove with a plate of pickled vegetables. As he chewed, his cheeks puffed in and out, and he ate very quickly. I sat across from him, bowl in hand, taking a sip of porridge and stealing a glance at him every now and then. This man had lived alone for more than 30 years after my death in a past life. He never remarried or had any more children. When the villagers tried to set him up with someone, he would just shake his head. Some said he couldn't let go of his dead son. Others said he couldn't let go of the woman who ran away, but neither was true. He simply felt he didn't deserve it. He felt it was his own inadequacy, that he couldn't protect his family, but it clearly wasn't his fault from start to finish. He was just an honest, hardworking man who got schemed against. Dad, I found your plane at home. It was in the toolbox. He paused mid-chew. What? I lied to you this morning. The plane's been at home the whole time. He put down the corn bun and stared at me. You little. I didn't want you to go to the market. His anger had yet to flare up when these words choked it back down. What? I don't want you to go to town. I lowered my head, staring at the porridge in my bowl. I'm afraid something might happen to you there. His expression shifted from anger to bewilderment. A 5.5-year-old saying, I'm afraid something might happen to you. He probably thought I'd had a nightmare or picked up the phrase from somewhere. He reached out and ruffled my hair, his hand heavy, tousling it completely. What could possibly happen to your dad? I didn't answer. He didn't press further either. He was never one to pry, but his hand moved from the top of my head to the back, paused as if wanting to pat it, then withdrew. The courtyard gate creaked open. Uncle Arthur walked in and Grace followed behind him. My dad saw Uncle Arthur and stood up. Arthur, big brother, what brings you here? Uncle Arthur glanced around the kitchen, one man and one child eating leftover porridge and cornbread. Not even a warm dish on the stove, his lips pressed into a thin line. Grace trailed behind him, her head lowered. She had changed her clothes and retied her hair. Her face showed no trace of tears, but her eyes were swollen. George, have a seat. Uncle Arthur sat down on the bench in the kitchen. My father put down his steamed cornbread and wiped his hands. He could tell something was off. When Uncle Arthur came to their house, it was rarely for anything good. Arthur, what's happened? Uncle Arthur didn't beat around the bush. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, took out the admission letter, and placed it on the table. First, some good news. Grace got into college, in Beijing, a very good school. My dad froze for a moment, then looked over at Grace. His expression was complicated. There was happiness, but also something he couldn't quite name, really. His voice came out a little husky. Grace didn't look up, just gave a small nod. That's good news, my dad said. His voice was low, but the corner of his mouth definitely twitched upward. He was happy for her genuine, heartfelt joy. He might have already vaguely suspected something, but he was still happy, because she was his woman, and his woman was making something of herself that made him happy. Uncle Arthur glanced at him and sighed, then he pulled out the second sheet of paper. George, take a look at this. My dad took it from him. He was not a literate man, but he knew enough. His master had taught him how to read blueprints, and later he had attended a few literacy classes in the village. He read the letter word by word. The kitchen was so quiet that the only sound was the crackling of firewood in the stove. I watched his hand holding the letter, his knuckles turning white one by one. He read for a long time, 3 times longer than Uncle Arthur had taken. Then he placed the letter on the table without a word. He did not explode in rage. He did not flip the table. He did not hurl insults. He just sat there, head bowed, hands resting on his knees. Those hands were trembling slightly. George, Uncle Arthur began. I got it. My father cut him off. His voice was as hoarse as sandpaper scraping against wood. He looked up at Grace. Grace's shoulders tensed. Did you send someone to cause trouble for me? It wasn't an accusatory tone. It was confirmation, like how he checked the grain of a piece of wood, with or against the grain, easy to carve or not. Grace's lips trembled for a long time before she managed to force out, George, I never meant to hurt you. King came by this morning, my dad said. Grace's body stiffened for a moment. He came to yell at me. Alistair was there. When my father said the words Alistair was there, his voice suddenly changed, like a string that had been taut all along. It trembled on those 4 syllables. He lowered his head and glanced at me. I was sitting on a small stool by the stove, still holding my bowl, the porridge already cold. He looked at me. I looked at him too. His eyes were red, but he didn't cry. Then he stood up, walked over to me, and crouched down. He took away the bowl of cold porridge in front of me, brought it to the stove, and reheated it in a pot. When it was ready, he brought it back and placed it in front of me. Eat. His voice steadied. I picked up the bowl. The porridge was hot, scalding my lips until they went numb, but I drank it. I finished it, spoonful by spoonful. My father squatted beside me, watching me drink the porridge, and never stood up. His big hand rested on my back, motionless. Uncle Arthur sat there, his eyes rimmed with red. Grace stood at the kitchen door, watching the scene. Her face was completely expressionless, not calm, just empty, like a person hollowed out. But I knew what she was thinking. She was thinking, it's over. The letter had been seen. Everything was exposed. Everything she had so carefully planned, sending her husband to prison, leaving under cover of night, disappearing without a trace, had all fallen apart. She was thinking about what to do next. Her mind worked faster than anyone else. in the room, but what she didn't know was, I still had an ace up my sleeve. The drafts of the letter she wrote back to Julian were still in my little bag. Let's call it a day for now. Let the bullet fly a little longer. Chapter 6. My dad stayed crouched beside me until I had finished every last bit of kanji in the bowl. Uncle Arthur left. Before he did, he exchanged a few private words with my dad. Their voices so low that I only caught the last sentence. George, don't do anything rash. Let's talk about it tomorrow. My dad nodded. Grace was still there too. She hadn't left, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't dare. Uncle Arthur was clutching her admission letter and that letter in his hand. If she left now, she would have nothing left. She needed that admission letter. Without it, she couldn't even set foot inside the university in Beijing, so she stayed. The sky had turned completely dark. My father added more firewood to the stove, bringing a touch of warmth to the kitchen. The kerosene lamp's light flickered against the walls, stretching the shadows of the three figures long and thin. Grace sat in the chair in the main room, not saying a word. My father sat in the kitchen, also not saying a word. Between them hung a door curtain. Neither spoke. First, I sat on a low stool, arms wrapped around my knees. At this hour in my past life, I would have already been asleep. She left while I was asleep in this life. I won't sleep. I'll wait. I'm waiting for her to make the first move. Grace is smart. She won't just sit around waiting for her fate. The letter has been seen, and Uncle Arthur knows. She has to come up with a plan before dawn. Either she admits fault and begs Uncle Arthur and my father to go easy on her, letting her go, either stand firm and use the admission letter as leverage. Having a college student in the village was a point of pride for the entire commune. So Uncle Arthur couldn't possibly stop her from going to school. I bet she'll choose the second path, because that's exactly what she did in her previous life, except no one saw that letter back then, so she left with more dignity, just as expected. About half an hour later, the sound of a chair scraping across the floor came from the main room. Grace lifted the door curtain and walked into the kitchen. She sat down across from my father. George, her voice had returned to calm. My father looked up at her. This one's on me. Julian's the type who loves to come up with ideas, and I shouldn't have listened to him, but you saw it yourself. Kane showed up today. You didn't go to the market, and he couldn't do a thing to you. No harm done. Her logic was clear, since no real consequences came of it. It was time to move on. My father didn't say anything. Arthur can hold on to the admission letter for me for now, but I have to go to school. George, you can't stop me. Her tone was soft but resolute. I got into college on my own merits. You can't keep me from going just because of what happened with Julian. My father still didn't speak. He kept his head down, staring at the flickering flames in the stove. After I'm gone, Alistair, you take care of him first. Once I'm settled over there, I'll come back for him. When I heard that line, I almost laughed out loud. In her past life, she'd said the exact same thing. I'll come back for you once I'm settled. And she never came back. 20 years. And she never returned. I haven't been back in 30 years. She got married in Beijing, had more children, and became a professor. In her new family, there was no place for Alistair. On her new household register, the name George no longer appeared. Mom, I finally spoke. Grace and my dad both looked at me at the same time. You said you would come pick me up. I looked at her. The kerosene lamp cast flickering shadows across her face. Did you really mean what you said? That question carried too much weight, coming from a 5.5-year-old. It was like a stone dropping into stagnant water. Grace's eyes sparkled. Of course it's true. Why would Mom lie to you? I stood up from my little stool and walked over to her. My head only reached her chest while she was sitting. I looked up at her, the kerosene lamp light flickering in my eyes. Mom, I had a dream. What dream? I dreamed you left. You left while I was asleep. You took that brown suitcase and went out the back door. Her breath caught. I ran after you. It was raining outside. I ran barefoot to the edge of the village and called out for you. My voice started to shake. It wasn't an act. It was really shaking, because this is not a dream, this is my past life. I called for you for so long, but you never came back. The kitchen was so quiet that only the crackling of the firewood could be heard. Grace's lips parted slightly, then closed again. My father's hands rested on his knees, and his knuckles were turning white again. Later, I got a fever, I continued, my voice growing softer. Grandma Lee held me, but I was burning up. Alistair. Grace suddenly bent down and scooped me into her arms. She held me tight, trapped in her embrace. I could smell the soap on her. It's just a dream, a bad dream. Mom's right here. Mom's not going anywhere. Her voice was trembling, but I could hear it. Her trembling wasn't from distress. It was from fear. She wasn't afraid that the child had a nightmare. She was afraid that the dream was too precise. She had indeed planned to leave while I was taking my nap. She had indeed meant to take that brown suitcase. She had indeed intended to go out through the back door. How could a 5.5-year-old know all this? She couldn't explain it, so she was scared. I didn't push her away, but I didn't hold her either. I just let her hold me in her arms, my eyes fixed on the wall behind her shoulder. There was a crack in the wall, running from the ceiling all the way down to the baseboard. In my past life, when I lay with a fever on the Kong, I used to stare at that very crack. I thought Mom would come back. I stared at the door, waiting for her to Push it open. She never came at all. While waiting, I closed my eyes and never opened them again. Mom, my voice was muffled against her chest. If you want to leave, just tell me. Don't sneak away. Her body froze. Make it clear to Dad. Make it clear to Uncle Arthur. Make it clear to me. I lifted my face from her shoulder and looked into her eyes. Don't make me come after you. After these words, no one in the kitchen spoke. A long, long time passed. My dad stood up. He walked over and took me from Grace's arms, with one hand under my bottom and the other around my back. His hands were very steady. He carried me into the inner room, laid me on the heated Kong, and tucked me in. Then he sat down on the edge of the Kong. His hand rested on my blanket, as if holding down something he was afraid might fly away. He didn't go back to the kitchen. He didn't say another word to Grace. He just sat there. Right beside me, from the kitchen came the soft scrape of a chair. Grace had stood up. Then followed a very long silence. I kept my eyes closed and pretended to be asleep, but I was listening the whole time. I heard footsteps in the kitchen. She was moving around. She walked into the main room, then over to the big wardrobe, and stopped. She remained motionless for a long time. Then footsteps returned to the kitchen. She didn't bring the suitcase tonight. She didn't dare to leave, but it wasn't because she had changed her mind. It was because she knew Uncle Arthur had her letter, and the admission notice was with him too. If she left tonight, she would have nothing. She has to wait until she gets her admission notice before leaving, so she needs some time. She needs to reorganize her plans, but what she doesn't know is, I need time too. I need one evening to let this news settle in the village. Uncle Arthur saw the letter, and Aunt Jo must know by now too. Aunt Jo can't keep a secret, not out of malice. But in that don't tell anyone. But here's what I heard, kind of way, by tomorrow morning, half the village will know that Grace had an outsider set up her own husband, and by then, even if she leaves, she won't be able to leave cleanly. In her past life, she left too cleanly. No one knew the truth. The version that spread through the village was, George went to prison. Grace couldn't go on, so she left. Everyone felt sorry for her. No one felt sorry for my father after he got out of prison. He carried the label of a good-for-nothing man and never held his head up again for the rest of his life. In this life, that won't happen. My father's hand was still resting on my blanket. I reached out my small hand and held one of his fingers. His fingers were rough as bark, but very warm. He didn't pull his hand away. Instead, he took hold of my entire hand. He was so strong that his grip hurt a little. Still, I didn't pull back in that hand. I closed my eyes this time. I actually fell asleep because I knew tonight he wouldn't leave. He wasn't going anywhere. He was right. Here, Chapter 7, I was woken by the sound of voices. The sky had yet to brighten, and a pale, grayish light seeped through the paper window. My father was no longer sitting on the edge of the brick bed. He was in the main room. He wasn't the only one talking. I pricked up my ears and listened for a while. It was Uncle Arthur's voice, and another man's voice, low and muffled, with an impatient tone. It was Cain. My heart leaped into my throat. I swung my legs off the Kong, planted my bare feet on the floor, and tiptoed behind the door curtain. A kerosene lamp was lit in the main room. Uncle Arthur sat by the immortal table, his face ashen. My father stood at the other end of the table, fists clenched, veins bulging and pulsing on his face. Cain was escorted by two men, Iron, son of my Uncle Arthur, an old son, the militia captain. Cain had a split lip and a swollen eye, clear signs that the process of inviting him here had been far from civil talk. Uncle Arthur slammed the table, making the enamel mug jump. Who told you to stir up trouble with George? Cain tilted his head and muttered something slurred and profane. Iron smacked the back of his head. Speak human language. Do you really think you'll just let me go if I talk? Cain bared his teeth. If you don't, I'll have the commune send someone over tomorrow, Uncle Arthur said, his voice turning cold, deliberately provoking a fight. And your previous assault record is still on file with the commune. Cain's expression shifted. He was a thug, sure, but no reckless outlaw. He only ever pushed around those weaker than himself. In his past life, he dared to provoke my father because he knew my dad had a quick temper and would throw the first punch, making my father the one in trouble, not him. But faced with Uncle Arthur and the militia captain, he folded. A guy named Julian, he finally said, from Beijing. He called the town post office and had a message passed to me. Gave me $50 to go insult George. $50 in 1978. 50 yuan was enough to support a rural family for nearly half a year. My father clenched his fist even tighter. How did he get in touch with you? Uncle Arthur pressed. My cousin works as the attendant at the town post office. That Julian called him, and my cousin got hold of me. Uncle Arthur glanced at my father. My father's face was like a slab of iron. What exactly did he want you to curse about? Cain hesitated for a moment. He wanted me to curse at George's wife. The filthier, the better, he said. If George threw a punch, he'd add another 100. As soon as those words came out, the air in the main room seemed to freeze. Iron and old son exchanged a glance. My father remained completely silent. His hand went from a fist to an open palm, then clenched back into a fist again. From behind the door curtain, I watched his hands that had done carpentry work for over a decade, covered in calluses and old scars in the previous life. Those hands had slammed a punch into Kane's temple, then those hands were cuffed, then those hands spent 3 years carving the name Alistair into a prison bunk bed. In this life, I pushed aside the door curtain. Dad, everyone's eyes turned to me. A child in a little cotton-padded jacket stood barefoot behind the curtain, dark eyes catching the light of the kerosene lamp. Alistair, why are you awake? My dad's tone immediately softened. I walked over to him, looked up, and glanced at Kane. Kane was looking at me too. A flicker crossed his eyes. He recognized me. Yesterday at noon, this was the boy who had rushed out, grabbed his leg, and cried, drawing Uncle Arthur over. I didn't look at him for long. I walked up to my dad and took his hand. His hand was hot, not the kind of heat from body temperature, the kind from blood rushing to it. Holding his hand, I pulled him toward the heated Kong bed. Dad, I'm hungry. He paused for a moment, then he took a deep breath. The breath went on for a long time, as if he were trying to swallow back everything inside his chest. He crouched down and picked me up, then he turned and headed toward the kitchen. As he walked past Kane, he stopped for a second. Kane shrank his neck back, but my dad didn't look at him. He carried me into the kitchen, scooped out leftover porridge from the night before, and set it on the stove to warm. His back faced the main hall. Uncle Arthur continued interrogating Kane in the main hall. My dad didn't utter a single word the whole time. I sat by the stove, watching him poke the firewood in the hearth with a pair of tongs. His movements were very slow. Each motion was slow, as if he were holding something back with great effort. Dad, yeah, don't hit anyone. He paused, the fire poker in his hand hesitating midair. If you hit someone, you'll end up behind bars, and if you're behind bars, there's no one left to look after me. He turned his head to look at me. I knew how heavy those words were for him. He was the kind of man who would rather suffer himself than let his family bear the slightest grievance, but hitting someone means prison, and prison means no one to care for the child. Those two truths placed together formed a set of shackles. He wasn't holding back for his own sake, he's putting up with it for my sake. Don't worry. His voice was so low it seemed to come from deep underground. Dad doesn't hit people. He brought the reheated congee over and set it in front of me. I drank it spoonful by spoonful. In the main room, Uncle Arthur had iron and old son. Take Kane away. They said they'd lock him up in the brigade storeroom for now and deal with him when it got light. Then Uncle Arthur walked into the kitchen. He looked at my dad, then at me, and sighed. George, about Grace's situation, you decide for yourself. I'll hold on to the notice for now. My dad nodded. Don't do anything rash. I won't. Uncle Arthur left. Father and I were once again the only two people left in the kitchen. The sky was beginning to lighten on the horizon. The rooster crowed for the first time outside the yard. I put down my bowl of porridge and wiped my mouth. Dad, yeah, if Mom wants to leave, let her go. His body stiffened for a moment, but you need to make her say it clearly, that she's leaving on her own. It's not your fault. He slowly turned around and squatted down to meet my eyes. The kerosene lamp was about to go out, and the fire in the stove was dying. Daylight seeped in through the paper window covering, falling across his face. The way he looked at me was complicated. It was like looking at a 5.5-year-old child, yet also like looking at someone who had lived far longer than him. Alistair. His voice was very soft. How do you know everything? I didn't answer. I just reached out and touched his hair. It was black, completely black. In this life, your hair won't turn white overnight. I won't let your hair turn white overnight. Chapter 8. Dawn broke. The news spread through the village as if it had grown wings. Early in the morning, Aunt Zhao went out to fetch water and exchanged a few words with some women at the well, using that tone of "I'm telling you, but don't you dare tell anyone else." By morning, the whole village knew. Grace's old classmate from Beijing had paid Kane $50 to beat up George. Grace had been involved with that person for a long time. Grace packed her bags, planning to sneak away while the child was asleep. The news exploded through the village. Some called Grace more venomous than a snake. Others said, she's an educated youth from the city. Of course she looks down on us country folks. A few spoke up for her. She got into college. What future would she have staying in the village? But their voices were faint, because setting up one's own husband like that was just too much. Around 9 or 10 in the morning, a few women showed up at my door. They didn't come into the yard, just stood outside, craning their necks to look in. Grace sat in the main room, motionless. My father was mending the bamboo poles in the yard. Without a word, I sat on the doorstep. Someone called out to me. Alistair, is your mother really leaving? I didn't answer. Poor kid. The woman sighed. Grace must have heard everything from the main hall. Her complexion had been terrible. From last night until now, she hadn't eaten a single thing, but she didn't fall apart. She was still trying to figure a way out. It was nearly noon when she came out of the main room. She walked into the yard and stopped in front of my father. George. The bamboo stick in my father's hand stopped mid-motion. I'm going to find Brother Arthur and get the acceptance letter back. My father glanced at her but said nothing. About Alistair's matter, she paused. I need to have a proper talk with you. There was a calculated gentleness in her tone. I knew exactly what she was going to do. She would go to Uncle Arthur and use her best tactics, crying, playing the victim, reasoning, negotiating, to get the admission letter back. Once she had it, she would hold all the cards. My father didn't stop her. He only said, Go ahead. She stepped out of the hospital gate. I stood up from the doorstep and followed behind. She took a few steps, noticed me following, and stopped. Alistair, you stay at home. I'm going with Mom. Her eyes flickered. She didn't want me to come along, but with people watching outside the courtyard, she couldn't very well push her own child back inside. Fine, let's go. She took my hand and led me toward Uncle Arthur's house. My hand rested in hers. Her hand was thin, with knobby knuckles and slightly cool fingertips. On the way, a few villagers spotted us. Their stares were a mix of emotions. Some looked on with sympathy, others with contempt, and still others just hoping for a spectacle. Grace kept her eyes straight ahead and walked quickly. Her back was ramrod straight even at this point. She was determined to maintain her dignity. When she arrived at her Uncle Arthur's house, he was chopping wood in the yard. Seeing her approach, he planted the axe into the stump. Grace, Brother Arthur. About the admission letter, let's talk inside. Once inside the main room, Uncle Arthur asked Aunt Jo to take me out to the yard to play. I didn't move. Uncle Arthur, I want to listen too. Uncle Arthur glanced at me, probably about to say, what's a little kid like you listening for? But in the end, he didn't say it. The things that child said yesterday changed how he sees me. He no longer treats me like an ordinary 5.5-year-old. The three of them sat in the main room of the house. Grace spoke up. This time, she wasn't crying. Brother Arthur, I admit it. I was wrong about what happened yesterday. That person Julian, I won't see him again, but I have to go to university. That's the national policy. Restoring the college entrance exam is meant to let capable people contribute to the country. I passed the exam. I can't not go. She brought out the country. In 1978, the words college entrance exam carried more weight than gold. It was Deng Xiaoping. Uncle Arthur is the village party secretary. He knows better than anyone the weight of these two words. He hesitated. Grace saw his hesitation. Immediately strike while the iron is hot. Notice of you back to me. After I'm gone, Alistair to George. I send my living expenses back every month. When I graduated assigned work, Alistair connects to the city. You don't have to pick me up. My voice interrupted her. Grace and Uncle Arthur both looked at me. I stood up from the small stool and walked over to Uncle Uncle Arthur, I have something to show you. I took off the small backpack from my back. I had been wearing it since yesterday, even sleeping with it on, and pulled out that stack of letters, not the one Julian had tucked inside the envelope. These were all the letters Grace had hidden in the false bottom of the wooden chest, including drafts of her replies to Julian. I placed the stack of papers on the old square table. All the color drained from Grace's face in an instant. She was so stunned that she didn't even think to snatch them away. Her voice came out as if forced through her throat. Where did you? In the box under the cabinet, I said. She shot to her feet. The chair toppled to the floor with a loud crash. She stared at me, her lips trembling. Uncle Arthur had already picked up the top letter. He read a few lines, his face turning ashen. That was the draft of Grace's reply to Julian. Her handwriting was beautiful, each stroke as neat as print. The letter read, Julian, now that you've taken care of Kane's situation, I feel relieved. I know George. He's definitely going to make a move. Once he's inside, things will be much easier on my end. Don't worry about Alistair. After I'm gone, if he stays with George's family, he'll be taken care of. When Uncle Arthur read the line, don't worry about Alistair, his voice faltered. He looked up at Grace. Finally, Grace's tears fell, but this time, she didn't sob out loud. Tears silently streamed down her cheeks, falling one by one onto her collar. Grace, her Uncle Arthur said, his voice as heavy as stone, did you write this yourself? She didn't deny it. She couldn't deny it. It was her handwriting, the kind that anyone who had been to the village's literacy class would recognize. Uncle Arthur flipped through the letters underneath. There were several more letters. Some were from Julian to her, and others were drafts of her replies to him. The earliest was dated a year ago, right around the time news of the college entrance examination reinstatement first reached the village. 1 year, they had been planning for an entire year, from reviewing for the exams, to arranging things with Kane, to plotting the night escape. Every step had been premeditated. Uncle Arthur laid out the letters one by one on the table. The 8 Immortals table wasn't large, and once the letters were spread out, they covered half of it. Grace stood across the table, looking at the letters. Her hands hung at her sides, clenched into fists. Brother Arthur, don't say any more. Uncle Arthur cut her off. His voice wasn't loud, but it was like a closed door. I'll give you the acceptance letter. You'll go to school. But he stood up and walked over to me. He crouched down to look me in the eye. He placed his hand heavily on my shoulder. Alistair, your uncle has a question for you. Who do you want to stay with? I looked at him. My dad. Uncle Arthur nodded. He stood up and turned to Grace. Grace, the child stays with George. You go to college, but before you leave, you must do 3 things. First, make it clear in front of me, in front of George, and in front of the villagers that you are leaving of your own accord, not because George isn't good enough, not because you're being forced. Second, sort things out clearly with George, settle whatever needs settling, don't leave anything vague. Third, he looked at me, apologized to Alistair. Grace swayed. She steadied herself against the table, then she slowly crouched down. As her knees bent, she seemed to go completely boneless. She crouched down in front of me. Her face was level with mine. Tears were still streaming down her face. Alistair. She called my name. I looked at her. I'm sorry, my child. Her voice cracked. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. In a past life, I chased after her shadow for so long. In this life, I stood still and watched her bow her head before me. She reached out to touch my face. I took a step back. Her hand stopped in midair. It was a beautiful hand, with long, slender fingers and clean nails. But that hand had never touched my forehead when I had a fever. That hand chose to pick up a suitcase instead of staying to hold me. She slowly withdrew her hand. She stood up without another word. She turned and walked out of the main hall of her Uncle Arthur's house. Sunlight streamed in through the door, falling upon the letter papers that covered the table. Black words on white paper, every sentence cut deep. Chapter 9. Grace was gone. Not in secret. She left in front of the entire village. Uncle Arthur organized a brief farewell in the commune yard. Though farewell was more of a formality, it was really an announcement. He had Grace stand before everyone and tell them what happened. She kept it short. I got into college and am going to study in Beijing. Alistair stayed home to live with George. It was my choice to leave. Her voice was steady, even tinged with a sense of decency, but her eyes never met anyone's. The people below murmured among themselves. Someone asked, "What about George?" Uncle Arthur said, "George's business has nothing to do with this." He never revealed the contents of the letter in public. Most of what was in those letters, the villagers had already pieced together through Aunt Zhao. Uncle Arthur was trying to preserve the last shred of dignity Grace had left, but Grace should have realized that her face was already gone, because the way the people standing below looked at her was completely different from before. Before, it was Grace is so capable. And Grace is so cultured. Now, there was silence, averted gazes, a sigh hidden behind a cough. After the farewell party ended, Grace went home. She needed to pack her things. Both my father and I were at home. She didn't take the brown suitcase, the one I had searched through, the one Uncle Arthur had rummaged through. She probably thought it was tainted. Instead, she found an old canvas bag and packed only the essentials: clothes, identification papers, and the admission letter. The admission letter was returned to her by Uncle Arthur. As she packed, my father sat in the main room, repairing a chair leg. The plane moved steadily back and forth across the wood, curling out thin shavings. The sound of the plane had a steady rhythm, like a clock. Grace finished packing her canvas bag and set it by the door of the main room. She stood there, looking at George. George didn't look up. George, the plane in his hand stopped. "I'm leaving." He didn't say anything. "Alistair, take care of him." He remained silent. The sound of the plane started up again, once, twice, 3 times. Grace stood there for a while. She bent down and picked up the canvas bag. Then she turned to me. I stood in the yard, with the jujube tree behind me. In my past life, she never ate a single jujube from that tree. She walked up to me. "Alistair." I looked up at her. "Mom left," I said. "Yeah." Her lips twitched. She squatted down, reached out, and touched my head. This time I didn't pull away. Her hand rested on top of my head for about 3 seconds. Then she stood up, picked up her canvas bag, and walked out of the courtyard gate. She didn't look back, neither did I chase after her. I stood in the courtyard, watching her figure disappear down the alley and out of the village. A few people were standing under the old locust tree at the village entrance. "Granny Lee is here. Uncle Arthur is here." There are also a few neighbors. Grace walked through them. Granny Lee looked at her, her lips moving slightly, but she didn't speak. "Uncle Arthur nodded, as if to see her off. She set off on the dirt road that led to town. The road wound its way into the distance, ending at the town's bus station, from where she could take a bus to the county seat, and from the county seat, a train to Beijing. She was gone. The road was long. Her silhouette grew smaller and smaller on the dirt road, until it became a tiny speck, vanishing where the road ended. In my past life, I ran barefoot to the edge of the village, into the rain, until my voice gave out. In this life, I stand in the yard and watch her walk the entire road. I don't chase after her. I don't cry. It doesn't rain. The sky is clear. The September sky stretched high and vast, a clear blue without a single cloud. Standing under the jujube tree, it suddenly struck me. This year, the tree was bearing so much fruit. The branches were bending under the weight. They were a brilliant, fiery red. As I was gazing at the jujube tree, a pair of large hands scooped me up from behind. My dad lifted me high above his head. He picked a jujube and popped it into my mouth, sweet, crisp. Chewing the jujube, I climbed onto his shoulders. He carried me inside. His neck was thick, tanned a dark reddish brown, and the fine hairs tickled my thighs. "Dad, yeah, aren't you sad?" His footsteps paused for a moment, then he said something. "Not when you're here." His voice was muffled, as if it were rolling out from deep in his chest. I lowered my head and pressed my face against the top of his head. Black hair, all black, not a single white one. I closed my eyes. In a previous life, he sat by my grave for an entire night, and by the next morning, his hair had turned completely white. Later, he lived alone in the village for over 30 years, spending every New Year's Eve, every meal, and every moment of aging in solitude, every Qingming festival. He would walk up the hill and place a bowl of sweet potato porridge and a bowl of brown sugar water before my grave. He would say, "Alistair, Dad warmed up some porridge for you." He would say, "Alistair, the jujubes are really plentiful again this year." He would say, "Alistair, Dad misses you." He spoke alone. No one answered him until he, too, was gone. He was buried next to me, 2 mounds on the slope, one large and one small, keeping each other company. That year, only a few families remained in the village. The young had all moved to the city. Only Grandma Lee's granddaughter came back once to sweep the grave, placing a bunch of wildflowers before it. No one knows who lies buried beneath those 2 mounds of earth. No one knows that the man named George waited his entire life, nor does anyone know that the child called Alistair was never carried into the rain by his mother. But this time, things are different. I am alive. His hair is black, his shoulders are broad. He carried me into the house, taking big, steady steps. We still have decades ahead of us, having meals together, celebrating the new year together, growing old together. He would never be alone again. Chapter 10. The days passed more peacefully than I had imagined. In the first month after Grace left, there was no word at all. In the second month, Uncle Arthur received a letter from Beijing, addressed to George from Grace. Inside were 20 yuan and 2 ration coupons. In the letter, she said she was doing well and told George to take good care of the children. My father didn't open that letter. My Uncle Arthur did. He kept the money and food stamps for my father. He also read the letter aloud to him. After hearing it, my father said, "Send the money back." Uncle Arthur hesitated for a moment, but he did as he was told. From then on, Grace sent money every month, and every month, it was sent back. By the 6th month, she stopped sending them. After that, there was no word from her at all. I don't know when she married Julian, and I don't care. Those things have nothing to do with me anymore. My father and I just live our life in the village. He kept on with his carpentry, and I learned to read from Granny Lee. She had gone to school for a few years when she was young and knew quite a few characters. Later, when the village started its own elementary school, I went there. My father worked very hard to put me through school. He did carpentry during the day and took on night jobs after dark. In winter, his hands were covered with chapped frostbite cracks, as rough as old tree bark. He never complained about the pain. He split the money he earned from making furniture into 2 parts, one for buying food, and the other he saved to pay for my tuition. One year when school started, tuition had gone up. He sold the only hen we had. That chicken was raised by me. I caught bugs for it every day. I watched as he sold it. He turned his back to me, handed the hen to the buyer, counted the money in his hand, and stood there for a long while before turning around. His face looked very calm, but I knew his heart was not. That night, when he warmed up the porridge for me, he added an extra spoonful of brown sugar. He never said he cared, but he poured all his care into that spoonful of brown sugar. I studied very hard in school. It wasn't memories from a past life that made me sharper than other kids my age. What knowledge could a child who died at 5.5 possibly have? It was because I knew that every cent of tuition came from his blood and sweat. I couldn't afford to waste any of it. Topped my class in elementary school, topped my class in middle school. Then came high school. I got into the key high school in the county seat. The day my dad took me to the county seat, he carried my bedroll for 15 li. He wouldn't let me carry it. "Save your strength. Don't wear yourself out." His hair was still black. No, there were a few white strands now, not the kind that turn overnight, but ones that had grown in slowly, mixing one by one with the black hair, as naturally as the grain in wood. He was getting old, but he was aging slowly, not like in the previous life. All in one night, during my 3 years of high school, I went home once a month. Every time he went back, he would kill a chicken. The chickens were ones he had raised again. A grown man, he raised chickens more carefully than anyone. He kept the coop spotless and mixed into their feed the worms he dug up from the mountains. I asked him why he cared so much about the chickens. He said, "That chicken you raised when you were little, I sold it. I've never forgotten eating the chicken." I almost cried. In the year I took the college entrance exam, I ranked 3rd in the entire county on my application. I put a university in the provincial capital as my first choice. My teacher called me in for a talk. "Alistair, with your score, you could apply to schools in Beijing." I said, "I don't want to go to Beijing." The teacher asked why. I said, "It's too far from home." What I didn't mention was that there was someone in Beijing I didn't want to see. The provincial university was 300 li from home, a 4-hour ride on the long-distance bus. I came back once a month. Every time my dad came to pick me up, he would stand under the old locust tree at the village entrance. The tree had grown taller and its branches and leaves were thicker than before. He stood beneath it, squinting toward the distant road, and when he spotted me, he would walk out from under the tree. He never waved, nor did he call out. He would just stand by the roadside, waiting for me to walk up to him. Then he took my bag, hoisted it onto his shoulder, and turned to walk home, hungry. Aren't you? The chicken stew is ready. It was always the same line. The year I graduated from university, I was assigned to a factory in the provincial capital, the technical department, a job for life. The night my father got the news, he had a couple of extra drinks. He doesn't usually drink much that day. He downed half a bottle of strong liquor, his face turning as red as a warrior's. He sat on the stone steps in the yard, looking up at the stars. Alistair, yeah, you've made something of yourself. He smiled when he said this. He rarely smiles. When he smiles, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes bunch up tight, and two of his teeth are already missing. I sat beside him. I am 22 years old, a good half a head taller than him, yet sitting next to him, I still felt like I was 5.5 years old, the same 5.5 who sat on the edge of the stove that autumn morning, drinking rice porridge sweetened with brown sugar. Dad, next year I'll bring you to the provincial capital. Not going. Why not? If I leave, who's going to look after the house? What's there to see in a house? Your mother. He paused. The jujube tree from when you were little is still here. Who's watching it? He never finished. What came after your mother? In that pause, I knew what he wanted to say. Maybe he wanted to say, after your mother left, this house is all that's left of me. Or maybe, what if your mother comes back? But he didn't say a word. He took another sip of his drink. I didn't press him either. Some things are better left unsaid. In the end, I really didn't bring him to the provincial capital. He didn't want to leave the village. He said that if he left, there would be no one to feed the chickens, water the jujube tree, or dust the little wooden stool I used as a child. But those were just excuses. The truth was, he just couldn't bear to leave. He had guarded this home his entire life. Ever since the day my mother passed away, he had lived alone in this yard, tending to this jujube tree and this house. He never saw it as a hardship. He said, Alistair is in the provincial capital, so I feel relieved. I stay home to keep watch, and that gives me peace of mind. Years passed by like flowing water. The reform and opening up began. The household responsibility system was introduced. 10,000 yuan households started to emerge. The village gradually emptied out as young people left to find work in the cities. My dad is still working as a carpenter. His craftsmanship is famous for miles around, and people even drive from the county seat to have him make furniture for them. He doesn't raise his prices. It's not that he doesn't want to. He just feels that a craftsman earns money through skill, and raising prices would let down long-time customers. When I send him money, he doesn't spend it. He saves every bit of it. The bank book is locked away in the large wardrobe he built with his own hands. Once, I went home and joked, Dad, why are you saving up so much money? He said, for your wedding. I did end up getting married. We met in the provincial capital. She was my co-worker's younger sister, 2 years my junior, with a gentle temperament and eyes that crinkled into crescents when she smiled. The wedding was held in the provincial capital. My dad came. He was wearing a new blue Zhongshan suit that he had made himself. He was a carpenter, not a tailor, so the stitches came out crooked, just like the little school bag he had sewn for me back in the day, but on him, it looked sharp and spirited. He stood at the wedding, toasting with others and drinking quite a bit, his face turning as red as a braised pork trotter. Someone asked him, George, your daughter-in-law is quite beautiful. Are you pleased? He rubbed his hands together, laughed for a good while, and finally said, pleased, pleased. When he laughed, I caught a look at his hair, mostly gray by then, but that happened strand by strand. Slowly, it was a mark left by time, not by sorrow. A few more years passed, then one day my dad called me. By then, our village finally had phone service, and it had taken him a long time to learn how to dial. He hemmed and hawed on the phone for a long time before finally saying, Alistair, someone's here. Who? He was silent for a long while. Your mother. My hand tightened around the receiver. Your mother has come to the village. They say it's organized by the school. She's here to teach as part of a rural support program. A rural teaching program. Professor Grace's resume has likely gained another shining entry, responding to the call, returning to the village where she once lived to teach and support the community. My father's voice was low. She went up to the slope where I was buried in my previous life. In this life, there is nothing on that slope. Years ago, my father planted a locust tree there. When I was little, I asked him why he planted that tree. He said, for the shade. What he didn't say was, if I hadn't made it, that tree would have marked my grave. He planted a tree there, as if as long as the tree lived, something would still remain. She stood under that tree for a long time. My dad said, then what? Then she came home, asked about you. I told her you were doing well in the provincial capital, and then she left. He said it all so casually, as if it were nothing, but I could hear it. The hand gripping the receiver was trembling. Across hundreds of miles of telephone line, I could hear his breathing, heavy, restrained. Dad, yeah, don't be sad. He was silent for several seconds. I'm not sad. He hung up right after saying that. I stood there holding the microphone for a long time. Later, I asked for leave and went back home. It was dusk when I arrived. My father was in the yard, sitting under the jujube tree. The tree had aged. Its trunk was covered with cracked, dry bark, and the branches weren't as lush as before. But it still bore fruit that year. He stood up when he saw me come back. What's Wrong, why the sudden visit? I miss you, he muttered under his breath, always running off. But his feet had already turned toward the kitchen. There was no need to guess. He was going to stew the chicken at dinner. I asked him, did she say anything else? Biting into a drumstick, he mumbled, no, she just stood there for a while and left. How did she look? He slowed his chewing for a moment. Aged. That was the word he said, aged. Not thinner, not fuller, not how are you. It was aged. With those two syllables, he summed up everything he felt the moment he saw her. I didn't ask any more questions. The next day, I went to the town's elementary school, where Grace was volunteering as a teacher. I didn't go inside. I stood at the school gate and looked through the iron railings. There was a woman teaching the children on the playground out in the open. She sat on a folding chair, surrounded by a circle of 7 or 8-year-old children. Her hair had turned completely white. Not a gradual whitening, it was an even, cleanly washed white. She wore a gray sweater and glasses, her back slightly hunched, her voice drifted over from the playground. Class, today we're going to learn a poem, thread from a loving mother's hand, clothes on her wandering son, stitch by stitch before he leaves, fearing he'll be long gone. When she recited fearing he'll be long gone, her voice suddenly faltered. It only went silent for a moment, then returned to normal. Maybe no one noticed, but I did. I stood outside the fence and watched her for a long time. She didn't see me. She was focused on teaching the children how to read poetry. She teaches well. Her gestures are gentle, her voice clear, as she leads the children through each word, phrase by phrase. Her expression is calm, but her hand, the one resting on her knee, is trembling slightly. I don't know what she's thinking. Maybe she's remembering that autumn morning when she cooked porridge with brown sugar for a 5-and-a-half-year-old boy. Maybe she's thinking of the dirt road leading to town, and that dusk she never looked back from. Perhaps she wasn't thinking about anything at all. She was just getting old. Class was over. The children scattered noisily and ran off to chase each other around the playground. She slowly stood up, folded her camping chair, and walked toward the classroom. After a few steps, she stopped. She turned around and saw me standing outside the fence. We were separated by an iron railing, about 20 paces apart. Her eyes squinted behind her glasses. Presbyopia. She needed a moment to adjust to see someone at a distance. Then she recognized me. I saw her lips move. She didn't call out, but I knew the shape her mouth made. That shape is Alistair. We looked at each other for about 10 seconds. Then I spoke. Hello, Mrs. Grace. She swayed. As if something had struck her, she stood there, one hand resting on the classroom doorframe. Her lips parted, then pressed together. But in the end, no sound came out. Tears spilled from behind her glasses and trickled down the wrinkles on her face. She didn't wipe them away, neither did I. Walk over. I looked at her and nodded. Then I turned around and walked away. After I had gone a long distance, I heard a voice behind me, very faint, as if drifting from very, very far away. Alistair. I didn't look back. When I returned to the entrance of the village, the locust tree was still there. My dad was waiting for me under the tree. When he saw me, he didn't ask anything. He took my bag and hoisted it onto his shoulder. Come on, let's go home. The chicken stew is ready. I followed behind him, walking home. On both sides of the road were autumn fields, the rice golden yellow. When the wind blew, the whole field rippled like golden waves. My father walked ahead with long strides, and I had to hurry to keep up. His broad back carried my bag on his shoulders. Most of his hair had turned gray, but his back remained straight. The way he walked was exactly the same as 30 years ago. When he carried me over that dirt ridge, suddenly, I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't because of Grace, it was because of him. It was because of this man who, silent his whole life, raised me with his calloused hands. In my past life, he guarded my grave until his hair turned white overnight. In this life, he guards me, and has gone gray for 30 years. But he smiles countless more times than in his past life. He watched me head off to school with a smile, sent me off to the county town with a smile, rubbed his hands nervously at my wedding with a smile, and on the phone, hemmed and hawed for ages without getting a word out. In this life, he is no longer alone, and neither am I. Dad, yeah, wait for me. He stopped walking and turned around. The autumn sunlight fell on his face, where wrinkles were etched like the bark of an old tree. He looked at me. Walk faster. The chicken is getting cold. I smiled. I took 2 quick steps and caught up with him. We walked side by side on the way home. The jujube tree was still in the yard. The chicken was in the pot. The porridge was on the stove. Home was still there. We were all there. That's enough. Story 2. My best friend is a dance streamer. Her top donor sent her 99 virtual carnival gifts and asked her to accompany him on an overseas trip. After I talked her out of it, she turned him down. He never gifted her again after that. 2 months later, the top donor publicly proposed to another streamer after splurging millions on her. My best friend's world came crashing down. She blamed me for everything, convinced I'd ruined her chance to marry into wealth. One day she got me drunk and abandoned me in a shady alley. I was tormented to death by a group of thugs. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day she said she was going on a trip with the top donor. My body still ached with terrifying pain. My best friend Sophie was hugging her phone and squealing, her face scrunched up with laughter. She rushed over and shook my shoulders vigorously. Mandy, look, Eric just sent me 99 carnivals. Her eyes crinkled into slits from smiling. I've got a sugar daddy now too. What do you think he sees in me? Before I could respond, a message popped up on her screen asking if she'd join him on an overseas trip. All expenses would be covered by him. Sophie gasped, thrusting her phone right in front of my face. My eyes snapped open. Look, Eric wants me to go on an overseas trip with him. Should I go? I snapped back to reality instantly. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. In my past life, Sophie had asked me the exact same question. I'm proceeding with caution. Tell her not to agree just yet. She's only known Eric, her top donor, for about 2 weeks. Besides, she's part of a group stream and is under a management contract. The company strictly prohibits employees from dating big spenders who shower them with gifts. Getting caught could mean anything from a slap on the wrist to getting fired. Last time I brought this up, my best friend was already having second thoughts. She even asked me if Eric might not actually be interested in dating her. Maybe he just wanted a travel buddy. I totally disagree. Guys like Eric are clearly just showering her with affection to get what they want. Besides, they've only known each other for 2 weeks. My best friend has no idea what kind of person Eric really is. What if he's a scammer who lures her out and sells her off? After much hesitation, my best friend took my advice and turned Eric down. To our surprise, Eric never gifted her. During her live streams again, 2 months later, Eric splurged millions in another streamers. He publicly proposed to another content creator. The streamer handed in her resignation the very next day. For 2 straight months, her best friend hadn't had any big spenders supporting her streams. She got shelved by the company. She hit rock bottom. She blames me entirely for the miserable situation she's in today. If I hadn't stopped her from going on that trip, I wouldn't have offended Eric. Her colleague wouldn't have ended up marrying into wealth instead of her. She absolutely despises me. They got me drunk one day and dumped me in an alley full of homeless people. Those thugs toyed with me until I died. Mandy, you're the one who deserves to die most. You deserve this. Enjoy your final moments of pleasure. Those were the last words I heard before I died. Mandy, say something. I jolted and met Sophie's scrutinizing gaze. I concealed the hatred in my eyes. When I looked up again, my face was beaming with a smile. It's up to you. Go if you want to. Don't go if you don't feel like it. Sophie's face fell when she heard me say that. Mandy, you're my best friend. Can't you at least give me some advice? This is a big decision. How can I just make it for you so casually? This time around, there's no one to hold me back. Sophie hesitated instead. Not giving an immediate answer, she stared at her phone, muttering to herself. But I have no idea what Eric is thinking. What if he wants to date me? The company strictly forbids workplace relationships. Besides, once you have a sugar daddy in the picture, other big spenders would think twice before throwing money at you. I let out a scornful laugh. So she knew everything all along. She looked at me again. What do you think? Should I go for the sugar daddy? Eric might be a super rich guy, but if he's not, wouldn't I be at a huge loss? I really don't know about that. You'll have to decide for yourself. Sophie stamped her foot in frustration. Mandy, you're completely useless. You don't know anything. All you're good for is staring at back-end data and collecting measly commissions. She snorted contemptuously before sweet-talking Eric on her phone. Eric, I'm at work right now. My company doesn't approve time-off requests. How about in a couple months? Once I've boosted my performance metrics a bit, I'll be able to take leave. She stared at her phone, chin resting thoughtfully in her palm. The thing is, Eric and I have only known each other for 2 weeks. I don't know him at all. For all I know, he might sell me off during this trip he's inviting me on. I'll string him along for a couple of months and see. If everything checks out, I'll go with him. See, I haven't said a single word to persuade her. She figured out the pros and cons all by herself. Sophie and I were college classmates. We joined this brokerage right after graduation. Originally, we both applied for back office positions. But somehow during her interview, she suddenly switched sides, said she wants to be a dance streamer. Let me know after the interview. Said she can't let her good looks go to waste. If she can land a sugar daddy, she'll be set for life. I told her that working behind the scenes would allow me to support her quite a bit, working the night shift, just like last time. Sophie's top donor didn't show up. Sophie seemed distracted the entire night. Her dance moves were riddled with mistakes. She pretended not to hear the stage manager calling her multiple times. She was feigning complete immersion in sorrow. During intermission, her fans reminded her in the group chat. She replied with a crying emoji. I'm only human with real emotions. You can't expect me to put on a happy face when I'm hurting. Just stop pressuring me. All right. Her intention was to gain sympathy from her fans. I never expected that using the wrong approach would cause some of my fans who were just boosting minor transactions to leave on the spot. She came to me in tears. Mandy, what should I do? In my past life, I felt sorry for her losing the fans she had worked so hard to gain, taught her a whole bunch of ways to retain fans, how to use emotional appeals to gain fans' sympathy, successfully managed to keep those fans from leaving. After that, she'd come to me whenever she had an issue, but I'm not a professional after all, so I couldn't help her win votes from fans during the guild competition. Instead of reflecting on her own issues, she gave me an earful. She pinned all the blame On me, she claimed that without my terrible advice, she would have already become the top streamer in the group. At that thought, I gently pushed her away and replied dismissively, "How would I know? I just analyze data. I don't understand these persuasion tactics." Sophie looked upset again. I shrugged. "Then what good are you? You're completely useless." I'd barely finished complaining when the stage manager called me up. To my surprise, Sophie pulled another stunt on stage. During the personal appeal segment, Sophie just broke down crying with the microphone in her hand. She kept playing the victim and whining about how heartbroken she was. She claimed those fans left the group because they didn't understand her. The live stream audience was completely baffled. The chat was flooded with demands for her to get off the stream. The control room had no choice but to cut her mic and pull her off stage for a talking to. I heard every word clearly. The boss told her to either dance properly or get lost. Right before the stream ended, her top donor showed up. She was frantically making heart gestures and blowing kisses from the back. Eric showed up in her previous stream too, but he didn't spend a single cent on her stream, throwing all his gifts to other group broadcasts. This time was no different. No matter how active Sophie was, Eric still didn't cast a vote for her. He gifted a rocket to every other streamer except her. When the live stream ended, Sophie had the worst stats. To make matters worse, I kept making mistakes today and ended up getting my pay docked. Sophie completely lost it. As soon as I got back to the dorm, I collapsed into a sobbing heap with my knees pulled to my chest. "Eric, why on earth would you do this?" I said flatly. "What do they have that I don't? Just because I turned down that trip. He never really cared about me. There are plenty of other guys out there." Her head snapped up as she stared at me. "Mandy, this is all your fault. I asked for your advice and you gave me nothing." Happy now? I'm completely baffled. If I give my opinion, she'll kill me, but if I don't, she'll still find a way to blame me. She stood before me with an air of haughty superiority. "Mandy, we're supposed to be best friends. You're definitely involved in Eric's anger. So, how are you going to make it up to me?" I stared at her like she was an idiot. "Sophie, have you lost your mind? He's your brother. What does that have to do with me?" She was furious. "If only you had talked me into going back then. It's because you didn't persuade me that Big Brother got angry, and you still say it doesn't matter." "What? Sophie, am I your mother? Do you have to do everything I say? And I told you, it was your call to go or not. You're the one who decided not to in the end. What's that got to do with me? If you're so eager to follow my advice, would you jump off a cliff if I told you to?" Sophie stood there frozen. She never expected me to say something like that to her. After all, I used to consider her my best friend and hardly ever spoke a harsh word to her. She finally processed what happened, her face flushing crimson with anger. "Mandy, what do you mean by that? So you don't consider me a friend anymore? Is that it? Fine, let's cut ties then. From now on, you go your way, and I'll go mine." She turned and stormed back into her room, slamming the door shut with a bang. I kept a straight face, wishing I could get as far away from this lunatic as possible. Soon after, her coquettish sobs could be heard coming from the room. She was trying to get Eric to apologize. "Eric, it hurts so much that you didn't send me any gifts today. Woo-woo. Do you know they were all mocking me after the live stream ended? They laughed at me for not having a generous supporter, mocked me for having the worst stats today. Woo-woo. Eric, I was wrong. Could you please show me some affection again? Your Sophie will always deserve your love." I couldn't make out what was said on the other end. Sophie burst into another fit of giggles. Sophie and I didn't speak to each other the next day. At work, I requested a different staff dormitory from my supervisor. The supervisor approved, but there's no opening at the moment. The earliest we can make the switch is in a week. Eric showed up the moment we went live today, back to being Sophie's guardian angel for the first half of the month. We kept voting for her non-stop, and during the individual competition, Sophie shot straight to first place. We stayed with her right until the end of the live stream. This went on for a whole week straight. Sophie suddenly became the company's golden girl. The supervisor groveled before her, gently urged her to show more respect to the boss. That day Sophie came to see me with her nose in the air. She snorted contemptuously. "So, Mandy, looks like Eric is all mine again. Apologize to me now, and I might just forgive you." I kept packing my suitcase without even turning my head. "Why should I apologize to you? You're the one who owes me an apology?" That's when she finally noticed what I was doing. She yanked my clothes off and tossed them onto the bed. "Mandy, why are you packing? Did you take time off to go traveling? Let me tell you, with your measly savings you can only afford domestic trips. Not like me. I'm going abroad with Eric." I packed my clothes into the suitcase. I glanced at her. "Well, congratulations then. Sophie's new roommate is Sarah, who does live streams with her." What a coincidence. In his past life, Eric publicly proposed to Sarah with a lavish display worth millions. At this point, she was still just a newcomer. She didn't have any senior colleagues to guide her. Sophie and she are inseparable every day. To prove how wrong I was to cut ties with her, often spends her commission buying all sorts of things for Sarah and deliberately flaunts it in front of me. "Mandy, having second thoughts, apologize now and I might consider forgiving you." Sarah rolled her eyes at me behind her back. "Sophie, why even bother? With her, she never knows when she's well off. With Mandy's limited perspective, could she even comprehend what Eric gave you? That really struck a chord with Sophie. She puffed out her chest with pride. Exactly, Eric is way out of Mandy's league. Mandy, you're destined to rot in entry-level positions as a data-crunching nobody. No response. What's there to say to someone who's about to get what's coming to them? She's already decided to go on the trip with Eric. Sophie got the most votes. This week, the company granted her a 5-day leave. Tomorrow's the day we're traveling with Eric. With just 5 days, going abroad isn't feasible, so we're heading to Hainan first. The next day, Eric came to pick her up in person at the office building. This was my first time seeing this person in 2 lifetimes, an utterly ordinary middle-aged man with a slightly receding hairline, driving a Bentley. Sophie was absolutely beaming. Strutting like a proud peacock, click-clacked her way into the car in her high heels. She gave me a wave, mouthed the words, "Jealous much, loser." I waved at Sophie with a beaming smile, still smiling. Let's see if you'll still be smiling when you get sold out later. Unfortunately, things didn't go as I had hoped. For the past 5 days, my social media feed has been completely dominated by Sophie. She was posting photos nonstop, flaunting the scenery, flaunting the figure, showing off the bags and clothes Eric bought for her. 5 days later, Sophie returned with her pockets full. Beaming with joy, she barged into my dorm room and tossed me one of her worn dresses like it was some kind of charity. Never seen anything like this. "Mandy, this dress costs 20,000. I'm tired of it. You can have it." It was clear Sophie had come specifically to humiliate me. She brought back some inexpensive souvenirs for every colleague, but she specifically gave me a dress she'd worn before. I still accepted it with a smile. Are you kidding? That thing costs 4 months of my salary. Selling the secondhand would easily net me an extra 10 grand. Why pass up free stuff? Sophie's been glowing with happiness every day since her vacation. He keeps telling all his coworkers how amazing Eric is. How big is the company he started? She gestured exaggeratedly with her arms. You have no idea. His family's company has over 3,000 employees. Eric told me he just sits at home and makes millions every day. Sophie clasped her hands together, her eyes sparkling like stars. I must be heaven's chosen one. I met a super generous big spender right after starting my stream. A colleague looked up the company Sophie mentioned. They said in confusion, "That's odd. Why isn't Eric listed among the shareholders?" I laughed. Sophie felt utterly humiliated. Her face instantly darkened. Are you joking? Someone of Eric's stature would never let commoners like you access his information. Sarah rolled her eyes so hard they nearly disappeared into the back of her head. Exactly, Eric is in a whole different league. You really think you can dig up his information? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The colleague remained skeptical but didn't dare say another word. Sophie has been riding high since she returned this week. Every day her scores leave everyone else in the dust. Eric not only showered her with gifts but stayed with her from start to finish of every live stream. My life would be nothing without Eric. Sarah always comes in last during group streams while using the restroom that day. I overheard Sarah in the next stall whining sweetly, "Big brother, I'm so jealous of Sophie. My daily scores have been terrible lately. The company warned they'll fire me if I keep this up. Boo-hoo, darling, could you be a little sweeter to Sarah? She's having such a rough time. I just turned 19. I'm actually 4 years younger than Sophie. Oh, stop it. I bought this gorgeous new dress yesterday. Wait till you see how stunning it looks. Should I send you a photo?" A mocking smile tugged at the corner of my lips. Looks like Sarah is trying to poach Sophie's Eric now. This live stream is going to be quite a show today. That evening, Eric showed up right when the stream started as usual, but he held off on sending Sophie any gifts. Sophie was baffled, repeatedly blowing kisses and forming heart gestures with her hands at the screen. Still, there was no response. It wasn't until the individual competition that Sarah started campaigning for votes. Eric sent several rocket gifts in a row. Sophie's face instantly turned ashen. She held back her anger because of the live stream, munching on sunflower seeds. I kept an eye on the data while enjoying the drama. What a spectacle. Absolutely riveting. They danced as if competing with each other, putting their hearts and souls into every move. They campaigned for votes with relentless determination. Their verbal tactics kept evolving, taking jabs at each other both overtly and covertly. Sophie hinted that Sarah was poaching someone else's top supporter. Sarah fired back that you can't blame others for your own incompetence. The atmosphere between them was pure carnage. The live stream viewer count was skyrocketing. The moderators intentionally scheduled the two for a head-to-head battle. Eric seems to be playing fair to everyone. You win some, you lose some. That's not going to work. A new MVP emerges every day. They must compete until one emerges victorious. Sophie has been the MVP for 10 consecutive days. The final showdown. Eric sent over a dozen virtual rockets to Sarah in a row. Sophie bit her lip, restlessly twisting her fingers as her face turned pale. Sarah scored higher than Sophie. Sophie held the microphone while Eric remained motionless. Sophie was eliminated. Victory was Sarah's in the end. Sarah shrieked with joy during her live stream. I sneered coldly. She set off one party popper after another. Sophie let out a yelp, covered her face, and bolted. The live stream wrapped up smoothly. We just finished compiling the data when screams erupted from the dance studio. They're throwing punches at each other. My colleague and I hadn't even finished packing up our gear, darted off to the dance studio to watch the drama unfold. Sarah stood to the side, covering her face. Sophie pointed at her and snarled viciously, "You bitch, how dare you seduce my man, you're asking for it." Sarah wasn't one to be trifled with either. She lunged forward, nails bared, and grabbed Sophie by the hair. "You old hag. Don't blame me for seducing him just because you can't keep a man. What? Are you and Eric involved or something? Is he your personal property? What gives you the right to stop me from voting for him? For someone your age, you're surprisingly possessive." Sophie's face turned purple with rage, yet she didn't dare explain what her relationship with Eric actually was. After all, the company strictly prohibits streamers from getting involved with their top donors. The two quickly got into a physical altercation. My colleague and I made a half-hearted attempt to break up the fight that continued until the supervisor arrived. Only then did the two of them stop. Both of them went all out, deliberately scratching at each other's faces. Each ended up with several red scratches on their face. The supervisor was so furious that she gave them a severe scolding and locked them in a dark room. "You're suspended from streaming for 3 days, and we're docking 1 month of your base pay." Sophie couldn't care less about base pay with those high commissions. She just stormed off without a second glance. Sarah's situation is different. She never gets any ticket sales, so she just lives off her base salary. Even though Eric was here today, it's only for 1 day. It's like everything we earned today got taken away. She bit her lip, glaring fiercely at Sophie's retreating figure. "I chose to sit back and watch the drama unfold in this lifetime, but I never expected it to be this thrilling." Sophie actually came to see me tonight, which was totally out of character for her. Of course, it wasn't to apologize or make amends. "Mandy, you've seen how well Eric treats me, right? Help me with something once I'm back on air, and I'll make up with you." I lifted my eyelids. I had a pretty good idea what she was talking about, because in my past life, she'd asked me to do the same thing for her. Seeing that I remained silent, Sophie let out a disdainful snort through her nose. "Mandy, are you deaf? If you make up with me, I'll share some of the gifts Eric gives me with you." I blew on my nails as if dusting off non-existent dirt. "If you have something to say, just say it, but I won't do anything illegal or against the rules." Sophie was at a loss for words. A long silence ensued. "It's not like we're breaking any laws here. I'm just asking you to tweak some data for me, just as I expected." Same old story as last time. Sophie asked me to manipulate the back-end data during the live stream, though in our previous life, she'd asked me to tweak her own stats. Since Eric left, she's been consistently ranking at the bottom. Her poor communication skills also managed to alienate a lot of fans. Gradually, no one was willing to vote for her anymore. She begged me to manipulate the data to make it look like she was getting votes. She tearfully said that if I hadn't talked her out of going on the trip, she wouldn't have offended Eric. I don't dare to falsify company data. Yet I felt guilty, so I used my own salary to anonymously gift her virtual coins. When she found out, she didn't even thank me. Instead, she acted like I should have done it all along. I make $5,000 a month, and most of it goes toward buying her virtual gifts later. I was completely broke and couldn't afford to send her any more gifts. She even suggested I do some physical work to earn money for her gifts. Her hatred for me reached its peak because of that. This time, Sophie asked me to alter Sarah's data. I stood up and stared at her coldly. "Are you kidding me? You want me to tamper with back-end data? That's completely against the rules. Are you trying to get me fired from the company?" Sophie was fearless. "So what? The company won't scrutinize a little data tweak. Aren't we best friends? What's the big deal about helping me out? You're just jealous I'm making more money, aren't you? Fine, I'll give you 500. Happy now?" Sophie cracked me up. "Find someone else, because I'm not helping." Sophie pointed at me with trembling fingers. "Fine, Mandy, this is the end of our friendship, you ungrateful snake. I can't believe I ever trusted someone like you. So you won't help me? Fine. When Eric gets back, you'll be the first person I demand they fire." She spun around and stormed off, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Who does she think she is? The owner of the company? Sophie reached up to a few of us backstage staff. Not a single person offered to help her. Only a fool would lend her a hand. 3 days later, the two resumed their broadcast. Who knows what tricks Sophie pulled? Eric started protecting her exclusively again. Didn't even get Sarah a single small gift. Sarah was so angry her eyes turned red. That evening, I overheard Sophie talking with Eric. "You're the best, big brother. I knew I could always count on you. How about I come visit you next week? A trip abroad. Sounds amazing. But, aw man. But my company only grants long vacations if we stay at the top of the rankings for 2 whole weeks straight." "Really? You're the best, but wouldn't that be too much of a financial burden for you? Love you. You're my absolute favorite. Mwah. Eric's trying to convince Sophie to travel abroad with him again. I'm convinced there's something off about Eric. My colleagues and I have discussed this privately. The company found no record of Eric, just as Sophie mentioned. We even searched for Eric by name. That name doesn't exist among these business leaders. We're all wondering if this could be an alias, a concerned Colleague had warned Sophie. They told her not to put so much trust in this Eric. Sophie tore into me like there was no tomorrow. She snapped that I should mind my own business, claiming her colleague was just jealous of her. If Eric found out, he'd make sure that colleague regretted it. After that, no one dared to give her any advice. Everyone understands the importance of respecting others' life paths. Perhaps for the company's extended holiday, Eric has been watching over Sophie all week, every day. Feels like MVP status. Meanwhile, Sarah had long been left in the dust. Sarah wanted to stand up for Eric too, but no matter how she defended him, posting photos, sharing videos, Eric remained completely indifferent, never cast another vote for her again. That night, a low-level alt account joined the livestream. We didn't think much of it, but when Sarah started campaigning for votes, that burner account just dropped several rockets out of nowhere. I chuckled, jumped over 20 levels in one go. Wow. Sarah finally got herself a sugar daddy. Eric's determined to get Sophie the MVP, so he's not about to go easy on this newcomer. The two of them were locked in a fierce rivalry. It all came down to the final showdown. Both their scores had been pushed past 1 million. That's over 100,000 yuan. The new guy is called David. It's like they're dead set on making sure Sarah takes first place. Suddenly gifted 99 carnival sets in a row. Over 300,000 RMB. Sarah stood frozen in place, completely speechless. Eric was completely exhausted at this point. Sarah took first place. We clicked our tongues in amazement, debating whether David is also a big spender. After ending the live stream, Sarah stared down Sophie with an air of superiority. Sophie, your Eric isn't all that impressive. He's not even fit to hold a candle to my David. Sophie spoke through gritted teeth, her words dripping with venom. Who knows if this sugar daddy will stick around? How many days can he actually protect you? What are you so smug about? Sophie's winning streak came to an abrupt end. My long vacation plans went down the drain. She was so furious that she posted dozens of rants on social media, dragging Sarah and her David. Eric seemed pretty ticked off too. After all, if we want to go abroad, we'll have to start our winning streak all over again this week. Eric and the veteran have been going at it hammer and tongs. It's either Sarah or Sophie coming out on top. Winning streaks never last more than 3 days anyway. The company is absolutely thrilled. They love watching this kind of gladiatorial showdown. When two people fight, the company profits, unable to secure consecutive wins. Sophie couldn't take extended leave. Eric was feeling weary. It seemed he was searching for a new purpose. Sometimes he only shows up once every couple of days. Sarah replaced Sophie as the new golden child at the company. Sophie fought tooth and nail to defend her Eric, but it was all for nothing. She started setting her sights elsewhere, like looking into that David guy. She found it really odd. David's just a nobody. How could he possibly be so loaded? This account doesn't belong to any big shot either. To her surprise, her investigation actually uncovered something. David is no wealthy tycoon at all. He's just an ordinary middle-aged man with a wife and daughter. He had a decent job with a monthly salary of 10,000 yuan. By the time we found out about it, Sophie had already quietly tipped off his wife. That morning, David's wife came to the office and caused a huge scene. He grabbed Sarah and slapped her several times, demanding she pay back the money. Sarah sobbed. This has nothing to do with me. I never asked him to spend it. Who do you think you are, throwing money around like that? An hour later, David showed up at the office too. He kicked his wife so hard she slammed into the wall. He pulled Sarah into a tight, comforting hug. Sarah, are you okay? I warned you. Stay away from Sarah. I spent that money willingly. She has nothing to do with it. His wife collapsed to the floor, pounding the wall and sobbing uncontrollably. Have you no conscience? You took out loans of 2 to 3 million just to shower this bitch with money. Our daughter is 5 years old. Do you think she doesn't need money? How could you do this to us? David was furious. He stepped forward and tried to slap his wife. The staff intervened and stopped him. Sarah backed away in disgust. David, did you actually take out loans for all that money? David turned to face her, his eyes filled with deep affection. Yes, Sarah, I'd do anything for you. I fell for you the moment I saw you. Your kitten-like voice in the live stream completely captivated me. Just say the word, and I'll divorce this bitch right now. I don't even want the daughter anymore. Of course, if you'd rather have a daughter without giving birth yourself, I'll fight for custody. Then she'll be your daughter too. Sarah frowned. The voice was shrill. Are you fucking kidding me? You're broke as hell. Stop pretending you've got money. I'm only 19. Why would I waste my youth on someone like you? Get lost. Stop harassing me. Before David could say another word, Sarah called the police. The police arrived quickly and took everyone involved to the station. My colleagues and I were just shaking our heads in disbelief. I can't believe someone actually took out a loan just to buy votes. Over 2 million in debt. That's absolutely insane. No one was happier than Sophie. She's been humming tunes at work all week, with a constant smile on her face. Because of this incident, Sarah was suspended from broadcasting for a few days to prevent David from causing trouble. Sarah had no energy left to compete with Sophie for attention. She was already swamped with her own problems. Even though she'd paused her broadcasts, David kept making moves. Yesterday he went all out, proposing with 999 roses right outside her office building. After Sarah rejected him, she blocked All of David's contact methods. David created multiple alternate accounts and bombarded Sarah with messages. He claimed he was now leaving his wife for her. Their relatives and friends also found out about the embarrassing situation, got fired from the company, and now I can't even pay back my loans. To my surprise, Sarah actually turned me down. He demanded that Sarah marry him right away, or else he wouldn't let it go. He also sent multiple graphic photos of his slashed wrists. He threatened that if she ignored him, he would kill himself and haunt Sarah as a ghost. Terrified, Sarah immediately quit her job and fled back to her hometown to escape the nightmare. Sophie took Sarah down. Back on the corporate throne, Eric has returned to being her guardian, staying with her from the start to the end of the stream. Lately, Sophie has been riding high. He treats everyone with contempt. He doesn't even respect the company's management. Tonight marks Sophie's 15th consecutive night of winning. She requested a leave of over half a month from the company. I'm going on an overseas trip with Eric. After work that evening, she did something unprecedented, treating the entire company to dinner. At the dinner table, she threw a glass of wine in my face. She looked down on me with contempt. Mandy, I'll ask you one more time, do you regret it? I calmly wiped the alcohol from my face with a tissue. Regret what? Regret crossing me, regret our falling out, regret not getting on your knees to apologize. A colleague tried to intervene, and she slapped them across the face. Who the hell do you think you are, trying to hold me back? Mandy, let me make this clear. You've got exactly 2 weeks left at this company. By the time I get back, you'd better be out of here for good. She let out a cold snort and scanned the room. And the rest of you dare to cross me, and you'll end up just like Mandy. A colleague handed me a piece of paper. They asked in a hushed voice, Mandy, aren't you mad? What's Sophie acting all high and mighty for? Just because she's got some big shot backing her up, what's the point of getting worked up over someone who's never coming back? The next day, Sophie made another grand exit from the office. Eric picked her up in his Ferrari this time. It was such a flex. They went to Europe on her very first day there. Sophie posted hundreds of moments. The next day, there was no word from her. The third day, then the fourth, still nothing. Everyone at the office was wondering why Sophie, who loved showing off, had stopped posting on social media. Some speculated that Eric might have taken her to one of his properties. No photography allowed. Sophie mentioned earlier that Eric's company had already expanded to Europe, but it wasn't until the 10th day. Sophie still hadn't posted anything on her social media feed. Colleagues tried reaching her but couldn't get through. When the 15-day vacation ended, there was still no word from Sophie, nor did she return to work. The company tried calling her, but couldn't get through. They then called her parents. That's when they discovered she hadn't contacted her parents since the second day of her Europe trip. The company finally reported her missing to the police. The police came to investigate. It turned out Eric's account had been deleted long ago. The names used were all fake. The police checked Sophie's location. The last known location was in northern Myanmar. Everyone fell silent. Though no official conclusion was reached, everyone knew exactly what had happened. The plan was a European vacation. How did we end up in northern Myanmar? The odds are stacked against Sophie. Some tender-hearted colleagues broke down in tears right then and there. Some colleagues asked me too. Mandy, she used to be your best friend. You must be heartbroken too, right? I wiped away my non-existent tears and nodded. Yes, absolutely devastated. Bullshit. Thinking about how she got me killed in my past life. I could just skin her alive and eat her flesh. And you think I'm sad if I had firecrackers? I'd set them off for 3 days straight to celebrate. She got exactly what she deserved. The company had a brief lull for a few days. Another round of group live streams kicked off. 2 left, and a few new girls joined the team. Maybe it's because that jinx Sophie finally left. The stream gained quite a few big spenders. The solo competitions are no longer dominated by a single standout. The viewership has been gradually growing. 2 months later, the police showed up at the company again. No surprise, the company got shut down. Eric was involved in illegal activities. The money they processed was all laundered funds. The company must return those assets in their original condition. They also had to undergo a police investigation. The company executive was so furious they ranted for 2 straight days. They thought they'd hit the jackpot. It turned out to be a pile of crap wrapped inside. Not just foul, but downright disgusting. The company not only failed to make money from Eric, but ended up losing money instead. After all, we had paid Sophie quite a lot in commissions before Sophie was taken to northern Myanmar. The company will have to cover this amount. Most of us staff members have already resigned. A small number have chosen to stand by the company through thick and thin. After quitting my job, I spent 2 weeks traveling with my savings. I came back and found a new job. Still the one keeping an eye on the data backstage during group streams. This time I visited a major company renowned in the industry. The salary is quite competitive, and the year-end bonus is pretty decent too. Sarah laid low at her hometown for a few months. She figured the heat had died down. Then she came back to work at the company next door to mine. When she found out about Sophie, she couldn't stop grinning. She got what was coming to her. Setting traps for others only ended up snaring herself. But Sarah wasn't much better either. She'd only been streaming for a few days. Somehow David found her Live stream again. He started stirring up trouble in the chat. Each time we banned one account, he'd show up with another. Every account sent Sarah substantial gifts. The person in charge knew about David's situation. They also knew he was an extremist. They were afraid David might do something extreme. Sarah was fired on the spot. She can come back to work after she sorts out this mess, not one to give up easily. Sarah interviewed at several companies in the area. Without exception, no company would take her. David texted her. He said Sarah had no one but him. He'd even turned to theft to provide for Sarah if she'd just come into his arms. Sarah was furious, sent dozens of messages cursing David out, also warned him to stop harassing me. David finally backed off, but just a few days later, Sarah vanished. A former colleague who was also Sarah's roommate told us that Sarah had suddenly gone missing that day. She said she was going back to the dorm to get something, and then we never heard from her again, and she didn't even take her things. She had no idea what to take. She only heard they needed to settle things with David. 3 days later, a former colleague called the police. The police pulled the surveillance footage. That night, Sarah was seen meeting David in an alley. She was never seen leaving the alley afterward. David, however, left carrying a burlap sack. The police followed this lead and located Sarah. It was in a dilapidated old neighborhood. Sarah wasn't dead. David had drugged her and taken her away. Her wrists and ankles were shackled with chains as thick as a forearm. She was completely naked. His body was covered in gruesome red welts. The tiny room contained nothing but a bed and an assortment of tools. Some of the tools were stained with blood. They say Sarah was completely unhinged when they rescued her. He's not quite right in the head. David was taken away. He was still shouting, "I did nothing wrong. She's my woman. She owes me. Everything is what she owes me." I went into so much debt for her, lost my family, everything. Doesn't she owe me? 3 months later, a former colleague sent me a video. It featured Eric and Sophie. Sophie was naked, crouched on the ground like a dog. Eric was holding a stun baton. Sophie pleaded for mercy through her tears. The sound of laughter from the crowd echoed around them. They treated her like nothing more than a plaything for their amusement. That's all for this video. My former colleague sighed with regret. "Mandy, I can't believe Eric actually sold Sophie off to northern Myanmar. Do you think she'll ever make it back? He's never coming back." Years later, I heard about David again. He served a few years in prison and was released. Just months after his release, he was stabbed to death in an alley to die with a grievance. The end. Story 2. In our clan, we each choose a dragon egg at birth to accompany us, then marry and bear children with the dragon when it hatches. My egg hasn't hatched yet. My sister's dragon came rushing over to sob to me. In our past life, I was blind to trust her lies. That's why I betrayed you. She never loved me at all. Just wanted to use my dragon's blood to save her boyfriend. I just saw her swap your eggs. The truth is, I'm the one who's truly yours. Is he reincarnated? What a coincidence. So am I. In my past life, I nurtured him with utmost care, giving him everything I had. He believed the slander that I'd swapped my sister's egg with mine, crippling his powers, and threw tantrums to join her instead. When I refused, he roasted me alive with dragon fire. After Rebirth, I'm done caring. What's the difference who I raise anyway? What egg swap? Never happened. His expression looked utterly shattered. Ira, don't you recognize me? I frowned in annoyance. Who the hell was this guy? Today marks the crucial moment when my dragon finally hatches. I won't let anyone ruin this. I pointed at him and snapped. Whose dragon is this? Keep it under control before it frightens mine. After raising it for over a decade, with just this final step left, failure is absolutely not an option now. I bit my finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the egg. The blood was quickly absorbed by the egg. Soon after, the eggshell began emitting a faint glow, a crisp cracking sound. The eggshell shattered. I couldn't wait to step forward, making sure he'd see me the moment he opened his eyes. How beautiful. My admiration came straight from the heart. Our clan forged a pact with the dragonkin a millennium ago. We aid their dwindling bloodlines with offspring. They ensure our prosperity. In our clan, every girl must journey alone to Dragon Mountain to choose her dragon egg from the age of 10. In my past life, I picked a dull gray egg, nurtured it with care, feeding it my own blood daily. Yet on our wedding day, it roasted me alive with a single fiery breath. Somehow he'd heard rumors that I'd swapped eggs with my sister out of selfishness. If not for you, how could I have been born without even the ability to fly? It's because you're so useless that I have to suffer with you. Why are you so selfish? Why don't you just drop dead? I recalled that I did see my sister trying to swap my egg back then, but I switched it back after she left. He's definitely one of my people. No matter how earnestly I explained, he refused to believe me, accusing me of making excuses, until his rage and anguish consumed me like living flames. After death, I was reborn. This time, I caught my sister secretly swapping our eggs, but pretended not to notice. What's the difference? Which one we raise anyway? The shell cracked open, revealing a sleeping infant inside who grew with every passing breeze. In no time, he blossomed into the form of a man, and just my type, that delicate, refined beauty. I leaned down to seal our bond with a kiss, marking this ritual as our eternal vow of devotion. Loren grew frantic beside me, with that wrinkled skin, beady black eyes, and mediocre physique. Ira, Are you seriously going to form a contract with this dragon? I turned with an amused smirk. This is the dragon I hatched. If I don't bond with him, should I bond with you instead? Loren froze, his eyes brimming with hurt. I shoved him aside without mercy. Move along. Don't interrupt my cuddle time with my husband. My little dragon has awakened. His obsidian eyes sparkled like the night sky, pure and mesmerizing, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Darling wife." That sweet little mouth filled me with joy, making all those days reading romance novels to his egg worthwhile. Everyone was saying, "Ira, you should give your dragon a name. Let's call it Jasper," she said with domineering CEO energy. "All right, Jasper it is then." The clan leader had Jasper's name recorded in the family registry and instructed, "Take your dragon away now and raise it well. When the time comes, you two can marry and have offspring." The uncles and aunts on the side were also urging us on. The dragon clan's lineage is dwindling. It falls to you to continue our bloodline. That's right, we're all waiting for your good news. I readily agreed. We'll head back right away and start making babies. She gave his cheek another playful pinch. How gorgeous. Forget waiting. I can hardly contain myself right now. I hurriedly pulled him upstairs. No, I won't allow this. Loren stepped forward to intervene. His sister grabbed his arm. What are you doing? You're supposed to be my dragon. Loren coldly shook off her hand. Let go. I regret ever believing your lies. How could I have hurt Ira because of them? The clan leader and the others were completely stunned. What on earth is going on here? Loren pointed at my sister and accused her before everyone. 10 years ago she swapped me with that dragon. I'm Ira's true dragon. I demand we switch back immediately. Wait, does that mean he's also been reborn? But what exactly is he trying to say with this outburst? Doesn't he dislike me? I treated him so well in my past life. When he first arrived, he couldn't adjust to the climate here and kept longing for the scenery of Dragon Mountain. I drove hundreds of kilometers every day just to take him into the mountains for fresh air. I even had to put my studies on hold because of it. Later, when he got injured and needed a blood transfusion, I kept him alive with my own blood. That nearly cost me half my life. But when he woke up, not a single word of thanks came my way, though it hurt. I let it slide, figuring he just didn't understand human complexities yet. Later, when we got married, he breathed fire at me right before the ceremony. He believed those slanderous words, convinced that I was the one who swapped the dragon egg all those years ago, causing him to lose all his spiritual power. If it weren't for what you did back then, I would have evolved into the supreme golden dragon by now. Someone as selfish as you doesn't deserve to live in this world. The pain in my heart cut deeper than any physical wound. I gave him everything, only to be repaid with this betrayal. How dare he have the audacity to request switching partners now? Excuse me, did anyone bother to get my consent for this? I flatly refused. Whether Seraphina swapped our eggs or not is none of my concern. All I know is I've formed a bond with my dragon. He's my life partner now. Xiaobo nestled obediently against me and planted a loud kiss on my cheek, saying, "That's right, I wouldn't trade my wife for anyone else either." I looked up and scoffed at Lauren's utterly shocked expression. Does this fool still think I'm that lovesick Ira from our past life who was head over heels for him? That dragon's fiery breath thoroughly cured me of my romantic delusions. After all, marriage is just marriage, right? Who cares who you marry? And Xiaobo is quite good looking anyway, isn't he? I immediately took Xiaobo upstairs. To be honest, I felt an instant connection with him, especially his face, which was exactly my type. You're so beautiful. Too, just because I was deceived in my past life doesn't mean I can't love again. I gently touched his face, clearly pleased, being quite perceptive. He picked up on my subtle hint and immediately offered to take a shower. I blushed. Oh my, can't wait any longer. Go ahead then. Truth be told, I was dying to get a good look at his sculpted physique, but just then, someone had to ruin the moment. It was the clan leader. He messaged me asking for help, that Loren absolutely refuses to marry Seraphina. I'm at my wit's end after all this time incubating them, and they've even taken human form. Yet, playing dumb, I countered. Elder, how is this any of my business? Stop playing innocent. Girl, this is entirely your doing. I insisted I'd followed all incubation protocols to the letter, so the outcome wasn't my responsibility. Can't you talk some sense into him? We've tried everything, even threatened the extinction of our dragon lineage, but he won't listen. Ira, you'll have to bear this burden. Without his cooperation, our family's prosperity will be lost. I understand exactly how the clan leader feels. Now that the pact is sealed, the natural next step would be marriage and heirs. This has been the way since time immemorial, without exception. After all, when dragon hatchlings emerge from their eggs, the first thing they see is their future mate. Classic imprinting at work. But who would have thought Loren would be the exception? The clan leader sighed in frustration. I chuckled. No wonder, he's a reincarnated soul. But honestly, that's none of my business, whatever bond we had was consumed by the flames of our past lives, so when the clan leader asked me to mediate, I flat out refused. No can do. Also, I'm busy kissing my husband, don't bother us unless it's urgent. Then I immediately powered off my device. That's still not enough to avoid being pestered by the clan leader's people. I decided to take Shabo out with me. He was surprisingly obedient, asking no questions and just sweetly said, "Wherever you go, I'll follow." After wandering around, he grew tired and transformed into a little azure dragon, curling up on me. I carried him home carefully, and as soon as I stepped inside, I spotted a figure crouching on the doorstep. Upon closer look, it turned out to be Loren. "What are you doing here?" He looked up with pleading eyes. "Just half a day apart, and you already look so haggard, like a forlorn little puppy. I've called you countless times and sent you so many messages. Why aren't you responding?" I found it ridiculous. Since when am I obligated to reply just because you texted? Who do you think you are to me? I remember one time he pulled a disappearing act without a word, leaving me frantic with worry. We've filed a police report and posted missing person notices. As a last resort, I just waited by the roadside near our home for him to return. I kept texting him over and over again. "Where are you? Don't hurt yourself just to spite me. We can talk things through. If you want to leave me, that's okay, just come back first, please." Back then he could still maintain his human form for a while, but I worried he'd reveal his true nature if he stayed out too long. If some troublemaker snaps photos and uploads them online, we're done for. I was so frantic that I burst into tears. To my surprise, he showed up fashionably late and stepped out of Serafina's car. They were all over each other, laughing, whispering, and even locking lips. Utterly inseparable. He only noticed me when he tripped over my crouched figure on the steps. He looked down with disdain, sneering. "What are you doing here? I'm not a 3-year-old child. Do I really need your supervision? Don't go looking for trouble in the future." That's how my heart gradually turned cold. What's with this sudden innocent act between us? Ugh, disgusting. Get lost. I've got no time for this. He blocked my path with outstretched arms, saying nothing, just staring at me with those puppy dog eyes. Oh, trying the handsome guy tactic. Honestly, I used to fall for that trick every time. If he ever looked at me like that, I'd instantly melt, forgetting all the awful things he did and even swallowing my pride to comfort him. Now that I've got my own hottie, why would I spare him a second thought? Move aside. Come on. Loren looked down, about to say something when he spotted the little azure dragon in my arms. You're holding him. You're actually holding him." His face twisted with jealousy. The little dragon raised its head slightly and murmured something. I whispered soothingly, "Shoo, it's all right, just a dog barking. Go back to sleep." My hushed tone made Loren visibly pale. "You don't actually like him, do you?" His voice even trembled as he said it. I tilted my head at him. "Yeah, I'll pamper my man. What's wrong with that?" "Oh, I get it. He's never been treated with this kind of tenderness in his life, has he?" Their dragon clan periodically regresses into miniature dragonlings from infancy. At this stage, they're at their most vulnerable. Even the slightest disturbance could be fatal, requiring extra meticulous care. In my past life, I worried he might come to harm while I was at school, so I made a point of bringing him along, just keep him right under my nose. But he completely missed my good intentions, thinking I was just giving him a hard time. "What's the point of dragging me to your classes every day? Do you think I'm not exhausted? All these people are driving me crazy. Don't you know this disrupts my spiritual practice? They look at me like I'm some kind of freak. Are you just here to mess with me?" As soon as he recovered, he couldn't wait to shapeshift back and pull a disappearing act. I frantically called around trying to track him down. He snapped back, "Stop mothering me. If you're so bored, go find something productive to do instead of clinging to me." 247. My heart has grown cold. After all those sleepless nights I pulled, his words made me look like a complete fool, and now he has the nerve to come to me with teary eyes, playing the victim. "Give me a break. I don't want to hear another word. You always say you value independence. Well, here's the perfect chance to prove it." That comment clearly hit a nerve. "You've got it all wrong. She's nothing like what you imagine. She knew how fragile I've been lately, yet she completely abandoned me. Give me a break. They just threw me into a lizard cage and went off to play by themselves. Even a stray dog could come bully me back. Then, treating me like some plaything." His voice choked up when recounting the most humiliating part. I nodded. "That's truly pitiful, but what's that got to do with me? In my past life, he resented my care and immediately turned to seduce my sister, begging her to save him from his misery. Now that you've seen his true colors, you come crying back to me. Do I look like a doormat to you?" 3. He bit his lips stubbornly, refusing to let me leave. Little azure dragon yawned lazily and said, "Ugh, so annoying. Even my wife told you to get lost. Why are you still hanging around?" Don't you realize how obnoxious this is? I nodded. This guy, if he's got something to say, he might as well say it all. Catching my glance, little Azure Dragon started rambling nonstop. Besides, like is like, dislike is dislike. Being clingy like this won't change anything. It just makes you look pathetic. Loren staggered, nearly losing his balance. It's not about being contradicted, but these very words. He'd said them to me before, in our past life. He turned a blind eye to my kindness, always. Choosing to oppose me instead, I thought since he'd just taken human form and knew little of this world, I'd indulge his dragon-like willfulness, yet I never imagined he'd seek out my sister the moment he turned away. Not only did his attitude toward me completely change, but he was also exchanging intimate smiles with her. I felt utterly heartbroken when I confronted him after he returned. He brushed me off with indifference. It was just casual conversation. Why are you overthinking it? Yet now. He's holding my hand saying, Ira, you're actually the one who's truly my wife. You saw Serafina swap the eggs back then, didn't you? No, you definitely saw it. He insisted stubbornly, then he pushed me to testify. If you just testify, we can swap them back, and I can return to your side. He gazed at me with hopeful eyes. The little Azure Dragon raised its head and asked, Honey, did you really see that? I sighed. Yes. I saw it with my own eyes. Loren was thrilled, so I cut him off. Immediately, even if I saw it, I wouldn't want to say anything. Loren looked shocked. Why, isn't it obvious? It's because of me. Little Azure Dragon snorted through his nostrils. With a perfect husband like me, why would my wife need anything else? I nodded with a smile. That's exactly it. With Loren staring in disbelief, I carried little Azure Dragon back home, but after what just happened, staying here felt pointless. Who knows when Loren might show up again? Let's move out, I suggested. He agreed without hesitation. We wasted no time and left that very night. I've been living a sober life for a while. During the day, I'd leave Chabot in the dorm, and he never made a fuss. At night when I went to study sessions, he'd quietly keep me company. After about a month of this routine, the clan leader called to say the trials were about to begin, insisting I bring Chabot back immediately. I know about the trials. Every dragon has latent potential, but it takes an arcane ritual to reveal it. That moment separates the mighty from the mediocre. Taking it seriously, I immediately got Chabot fitted for a tailored suit. These days, clothes make the man like a saddle makes the horse. Slip into that bespoke suit and the aura follows. Who'd have thought I'd run into Loren even in this obscure little boutique? Do you have to be everywhere I go? Loren fixed those puppy dog eyes on me and said, What if I told you this wasn't a coincidence? I got goosebumps all over. How odd. Coming from him, I reached out. Serafina, do me a favor and keep your people in check. I shot him a pointed look and added sarcastically, I'm a decent person, not into cheating games. Lauren's expression darkened. Serafina stormed over immediately, yanking Lauren's ear as she scolded. What the hell are you doing? Pulling this crop right under my nose. I'm warning you, don't try any funny business. She tossed a pile of clothes at him. Try these on. Loren shook free. Why the hell should I listen to you? Serafina smirked coldly. Because I hold your life in my hands. She produced a pitch-black stone, muttered an incantation over it, and Loren immediately clutched his head in pain. Know what this is? When your dragonkin forged the pact with us, they left us this artifact to keep you in line. One chant over this stone when I'm displeased, and your skull will feel like it's splitting open. Loren stared at the stone in disbelief. You all have these? Serafina nodded. He suddenly looked up at me. Then you, with a faint smile, I pulled out an identical stone from my pocket and dangled it before him. Loren asked in confusion, then why didn't you use it on him in your past life? Isn't that precisely because of love? I didn't want to bind him with such means otherwise. With all his provocations, do you think I'd have let him live? Chabot just stepped out of the fitting room and spotted Loren. With a puzzled look, she muttered, What's he crying about in broad daylight? I shrugged. Who knows? Maybe he's just overcome with patriotism. Let's go. I grabbed Chabot's hand and walked away. Meanwhile, Loren remained frozen in place, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. Serafina stood by, scolding him while using her stone-like strength to force him into trying on clothes one by one. His face darkened with reluctance, yet he had no choice but to comply. The ordeal continued until he was completely exhausted, and then came the real kicker. Serafina packed up all the clothes she tried on and asked the clerk to ship them to her boyfriend. Remember not to include my name. It's gotta be a total surprise. The move completely floored Loren. Wait, those aren't for me. Serafina rolled her eyes. What were you thinking? Of course I bought these for my boyfriend. His expression shattered as he stood frozen in place. He'd expected Serafina to be domineering and unkind, but never imagined she'd openly cheat right in front of him, technically speaking. Serafina already had a boyfriend in our past life. I'd warned him. Serafina had countless boyfriends back in her school days, but he wouldn't listen when I told him that. He even mocked me, saying I was just jealous because I couldn't get a man. Do you realize how ugly you're being? If you lack charm, work on yourself instead of putting others down. Oh, so my well-intentioned advice came across as jealousy to him. Fine then. He's been reborn too. Let the bastard open his damn eyes and see the truth. I left with Xiaobo to make sure Xiaobo would shine that day. I even hired a PR agency, but that slippery bastard somehow ambushed me during a bathroom break that scared the living daylights out of me. What are you doing? He grabbed my arm, staring intently as if he had 1,000 things to say, but I wasn't having any of it. Just turned on my heel and walked away. Don't go. He grabbed my arm, then wrapped me in a back hug, mumbling into my shoulder, I missed you. I couldn't stand hearing that nonsense, so I instinctively elbowed him. To my surprise, he crumpled to the ground, clutching his stomach in pain. I teased, "Wow, are you going into labor or something?" He gasped and said, "Serafina just hit me." Oh, I know about that. Just saw Serafina's post. Something about her boyfriend suspecting she's got a side piece and what to do. Someone dropped this golden comment. Just beat the side piece up to prove your loyalty then, huh? That comment was totally from me, seeing Loren looking half dead like this. Serafina must have really gone to town on him. She hit me. He even rolled up his sleeves to show how pitiful he was, hoping I'd take pity on him. How could I possibly feel sorry for you? I'm too busy laughing at you, I said. Look on the bright side. Sure, you got beaten up, but long-term you're Serafina's future husband. That guy's just her current fling at best. You've got the upper hand. His face turned all shades of pale and green, absolutely priceless. Whether triggered by those words or not, the guy who was just hunched over in pain suddenly straightened up and pinned me against the wall. Then he launched into this whole tortured love confession. She means nothing to me. I never wanted to be her husband. I only want to be yours. He tilted my chin up, leaning in closer inch by inch, and then he had the audacity to weaponize his god-tier good looks against me. Ira, you're the only one in my heart. His voice was so mesmerizing it could make anyone weak in the knees. Looking back, I was completely smitten by his looks back then, totally love-struck and willing to do anything for him. But now that I have Xiaobo, I'm completely immune to pretty faces. The moment he tried to kiss me, I pushed him away without hesitation. He stared at me in stunned disbelief, clearly baffled by why his trick had failed. Just then, the bead he'd been holding in his mouth tumbled out. For the moment I picked it up, everything became crystal clear. This was no ordinary bead. It had the power to nullify the pact we'd forged with the Dragonkin. In other words, if I eat this, my relationship with Xiaobo ends right here. Damn, you're good. How do you even find this thing? His lips trembled as his eyes reddened. Don't you love me anymore? You promised you'd love me no matter what. Do you have any idea what kind of life I'm living now? She keeps yelling at me, ordering me around, and even said she'll make me breathe fire to grill meat at her boyfriend's barbecue party. I gritted my teeth in outrage. I'm a dragon, for heaven's sake. How could I possibly stoop to such humiliation? I couldn't help but burst out laughing. That's actually a brilliant idea. Serafina's imagination knows no bounds. He came over to hug me, his eyes suddenly reddening. Ira, please don't leave me. I smiled faintly. We were never even together. How could there be any leaving to speak of? His entire body went rigid, his body temperature plummeting instantly. For a dragon, this meant true bone-chilling terror. As I turned away, he suddenly grabbed my wrist and demanded, "Did you also get reborn? That orb isn't something ordinary people would recognize. In our past life, only the clan leader, myself, and you had seen it. So you've been reborn too, haven't you?" I arched an eyebrow without denying it. In our past life, he made a scene demanding to leave me, insisting on choosing a new master. The whole affair blew up publicly, leaving me utterly humiliated and the butt of jokes. Everyone mocked my incompetence. I couldn't even keep my own people in line. After raising you from an egg, is this all you're capable of? I went through a depressive breakdown and had to rely on medication to sleep at night. Yet during my worst moments, he was actively pursuing Serafina, constantly sharing intimate photos with her. He even claimed to be ready to commit to a relationship with her, so genuine and passionate. The most outrageous part was him claiming to have even prepared dragon scales. I was utterly stunned in that moment. The process of a dragon removing its own scales is akin to torture, symbolizing absolute devotion, the highest courtship ritual in draconic culture. That moment hit me so hard I nearly ended it all. Even now, after all this time, those painful memories still haunt me. How could a few tears and sweet words ever make up for it? You, his eyes glistened with tears, don't love me anymore. So, do you want the good news or the bad news first? After a moment's hesitation, he chose the good news. The good news is Love, he was overjoyed. Don't rush, I've got more bad news for you, I said with a smirk. The bad news is, that was before the rebirth. Now, not a damn thing changed. How dare you expect my forgiveness after hurting me? Besides, I've already moved on with someone else. Xiaobo, come here quick. Coming. Xiaobo came over with a beaming smile, planted a loud kiss on my cheek to mark her territory. Good girl, I replied with an equally bright smile. Loren stood aside like an awkward outsider who didn't belong. He wanted to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. Xiaobo teased. Ouch, looks like he's heartbroken. Aren't you gonna comfort him, wifey? LMAO, his broken heart ain't my damn business. Besides, the real heartbreaker's coming up soon with the test. The Dragon Clan's trial was a grand event, drawing a huge crowd that very day. Everyone was brimming with curiosity. After all, they'd hatched from eggs. Nobody knew what abilities they might possess, but there was a special stone that could reveal their powers. Legend has it this was passed down over 1,000 years ago. Utterly mystical. Loren hatched first, so naturally he was the first to take the test. After pricking his finger, he let a drop of blood fall onto it. The stone turned black as a result. He looked utterly bewildered, because it meant he'd have no real skills in the future. Impossible. He pricked his finger again. But several drops later, nothing had changed. Everyone was deeply disappointed. If the dragon lacks power, it means it's weak itself. How could it possibly protect our family then? Could this be a mistake? Exactly. Why don't we give it another try? But no matter how he tried, the outcome remained the same. Loren panicked. This can't be happening. How could I? I was a golden dragon in my past life. I pushed him aside. Done yet. Move along now. I had Xiaobo step forward. Xiaobo did as told, but miraculously, his blood turned golden upon contact. The clan leader exclaimed excitedly. Golden, from now on, he shall be the golden dragon. The crowd erupted in excitement. A century ago, our ancestors raised a golden dragon, and ever since then our family prospered with continuous wealth. But in recent years, signs of decline have begun to appear. That's why spotting the golden dragon symbolizes renewed hope for our family. Naturally, the clan leader and everyone were thrilled. They crowded around Xiaobo, showering him with praise and declaring he'd become the most important figure in our family from now on. 5. Loren stood frozen in place, utterly ignored, still doubting himself. How could this be possible? I was a golden dragon in my past life. Watching him spiral into madness, I could barely suppress my laughter. I walked over and patted his shoulder, urging him to think outside the box. Is it possible you were never actually a golden dragon to begin with, in his past life? When his blood once dripped onto the ground, insects swarmed to feed on it. I can't speak for other things, but a dragon with spiritual power, even its blood is incredibly potent. No insect would dare come near it. To test my theory, I secretly tipped this stone for analysis. Turns out, he's just the most ordinary dragon you could imagine, but he's so prideful by nature. If he ever found out, it would crush him, so I kept making excuses before the test, procrastinating again and again. He didn't understand my good intentions, thinking I was deliberately hiding his potential to keep him for myself. We even had several heated arguments over it now, so I told him this brutal truth. The truth is, you're just trash. He refused to believe it and desperately argued. No way. If what you're saying is true, then why was my blood golden in my past life? Explain that. I shrugged and admitted without hesitation. Because I faked it. I switched the stones in advance and painted them with pigment. Any stray cat or dog's blood would turn it gold when dripped in. He thought he was some chosen one. But turns out he's just an ordinary little dragon with no special skills. All he'll ever do is fly around or play with fire. Loren's face contorted in shock, his whole body swaying from the devastating blow. He shook his head wildly, shouting, "Impossible, absolutely impossible." Then he pointed at Xiaobo and demanded, "Then what about him? How do you explain this? In our past life, I saw his blood run black. Did you tamper with the stone again this time?" Hearing this, the clan leader immediately ordered Xiaobo to repeat the blood ritual. This time the team leader personally supervised it again. No, turns out Xiaobo was genuinely the golden dragon all along. That completely broke Loren's defenses. I chuckled, watching his utterly bewildered expression. Clearly he wouldn't grasp this anytime soon. To really get under his skin, I decided to hit him with the truth. It's not Xiaobo who's exceptional. I'm the once-in-a-millennium supreme dragon tamer. Every dragon I've raised has ultimately unlocked their full potential. To put it bluntly, even if I hadn't cheated in our past lives, he would have still become a radiant golden dragon under my guidance. I've known it all along, but didn't want to force his growth. That's why I let him take his time. After all, he's a dragon. Time is the one thing he'll never run out of in this lifetime. Besides, I genuinely care for him and wouldn't want him to pay a steep price for accelerated growth, but he thought I was neglecting it on purpose, dragging my feet. He even bought into my sister's slander once, and paid the price for it. So you see, you brought all this upon yourself. Loren froze completely upon hearing this. His expression was indescribably awful. He looked utterly torn between laughing and crying. Finally, he let out a wail and started screaming hysterically. At that point, he clearly lost his mind. But that's none of my business. After the ceremony, Xiaobo and I lived like immortals for a while under my guidance. Xiaobo grew rapidly. His skills improved by leaps and bounds. He could already transform into a dragon and take me flying around. When I returned again, a whole year had passed. At a family gathering, I saw Loren, who'd been absent for ages, expressionless and listless as Serafina ordered him around. I heard my sister treated him terribly, constantly bossing him around like a servant. The moment something goes wrong, they resort to yelling and hitting him. Once, someone came home to find him lying on the ground, barely alive, nothing like the majestic dragon he should be, just a listless, oversized lizard. The clan leader might have cut him some slack given his dragon status, but after his abysmal test results, even that courtesy vanished. They even agreed to let Serafina return to the Dragon Mountains in a few years to find another egg to hatch, so he's basically a discarded pawn now. Little Bo giggled when she heard. How pathetic, pathetic, hardly. He brought it upon himself. Xiaobo nodded. Exactly, he totally deserves this, so if he comes begging to you, don't you dare soften up. Loren's been trying to get close to me ever since I returned these past few days, hoping I'd help him out, but I haven't given him the time of day. Today he showed up at my door again. Ira, are you really leaving me for good? His haggard face and sorrowful expression showed he'd been through absolute torment. Xiaobo quipped sarcastically with exaggerated flair. Good grief, what specter crawled out of the woodwork? Don't be mean, that's Loren we're talking about. The heartthrob of his prime, Xiaobo deliberately thumped his chest. Handsome, more like a walking nightmare. That ghastly appearance is downright terrifying. What's the point of showing up looking like that? Loren wanted to argue but found himself speechless. All along the way, many had been frightened by his disturbing appearance. Ira, his sunken eyes pleaded pitifully at me. You're my only hope now. I sighed helplessly. What else could I do? Xiaobo nodded and piled on. You had such a wonderful wife but chose that trash instead. Who else can you blame? Throwing away a perfectly good life to self-destruct like this, you must have a death wish. Thankfully I stuck close to my wife this time. Now life's actually enjoyable. Wait, did I just detect some hidden meaning in that? This time, 6, he chuckled darkly. Truth be told, I'm a reincarnator too. In my past life, I suffered daily with that woman like some pathetic lackey. When I woke up this time, I was dreading how to handle it, but that idiot actually went after her himself, left me free to snag this amazing wife instead. Loren turned pale. Xiaobo continued. Come on man, you've got no idea. In my past life, I suffered terribly with that woman. Do you know how deranged she was? Her boyfriend had an incurable disease, and she somehow heard that dragon's blood drawn during agony could be refined into medicinal pills. So she deliberately tortured me to extract my blood. Ugh, in that lifetime I was literally drained dry. Oh, let me tell you something else in confidence. That woman from my past life claimed the more useless the dragon, the more potent its blood. She actually complained my dragon blood was too high quality for her boyfriend's condition. Now with a worthless dragon like you showing up, it's practically tailor-made for her needs. Holy shit, that's some savage sarcasm. It's just different ways of calling him stupid. What's the difference between this and stabbing Loren right through the heart? He could barely stand after hearing it, spat out a mouthful of blood, then collapsed and never got up again. I raised an eyebrow. Looked like he was done for. Probably wouldn't be bothering me again. Xiaobo sidled up with a grin. Honey, how'd I do just now? I've rehearsed that reincarnation speech 100 times. Didn't embarrass you, did I? Truth is, there was no rebirth. I'd fabricated the whole story to keep Loren from pestering us again. Seems like it worked like a charm after all. Having lived a second life, I've learned one golden rule. Let people chart their own destinies. Since it's the path he chose, he'll have to crawl through it if he must. Whether he lives or dies is his own business now. In this lifetime, I'm only here for the good times. Story 2. I died at the door of my marital home. The pain of the zombies' bites lingered in my mind. My last vision was my husband tightly holding me in his arms, trying to use his body to shield me from the zombies' bites. The sharp voice of the mother-in-law echoed in the room. I prayed that she would open the door, but until I died, that house belonging to me never opened even a crack. I have been reborn, and I will watch my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family suffer the consequences, making them taste the pain of being devoured by zombies. The pain of being bitten and devoured by zombies still lingered in my mind. I suddenly sat up, my heart pounding wildly, and my pajamas were soaked with sweat. I quickly looked around, and the familiar environment made me feel a Bit at ease, this isn't a dream, I really have returned. I touched my neck, which was still slightly painful. The apocalypse, zombies, everything is still possible. My husband also suddenly sat up. His eyes were filled with fear and uncertainty, but upon seeing me, he gradually calmed down, his eyes glistening with tears. Looking into my dazed gaze, his voice carried an uncertain and tentative tone. We're back. His voice trembled. I tightly held his hand, feeling his warmth, confirming that this was not an illusion. Yes, we have returned. The pain of being bitten by zombies still makes me shiver. Our eyes met. No need for words. We both understood that this time, we would survive better, and also make those who hurt us pay the price. I picked up my phone. Today is November 10th. The apocalypse broke out on the afternoon of November 18th. In the previous life, it was the third day of the apocalypse. My mother-in-law came to our community with my husband's sister-in-law and their 3 people, and she strictly controlled the food at home. All the food and drinks were given to my nephew's family first, and we had to look at their faces to know what we could eat. Until a week after the apocalypse, the water and electricity stopped, and the food at home became even more scarce, and my sister-in-law asked us to go out to find food. Although there was still enough rice and flour at home to last us 3 or 4 months if we saved a little, they wasted food recklessly. My nephew would throw away food he didn't like, and the food quickly ran out. The radio was playing the message that people should stay at home, and the zombies were staring at us from the corridor. My mother-in-law mercilessly kicked us out of the house. No matter how we begged my mother-in-law to open the door, her heartless voice came from behind the door. Elder brother, there's not much food left at home. We are the last remaining child in the family, and we absolutely cannot have any problems. You are the eldest, you must take responsibility. We were devoured by zombies in the corridor in endless despair until the very end. My husband still tightly protected me underneath him. This time, I will watch my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law's family suffer the consequences of their own actions. We got married after graduating from university. Our parents live in the countryside and rarely come to bother us. I looked at my husband, my voice trembling. This life, I will make them experience the pain we went through. My husband remained silent. I thought he would still defend his family. He looked up at me. Wife, it was all my fault before. I made you suffer, but he held my hand. They are my relatives. I don't want to see your hands stained with blood. I just want to live a good life with you in this apocalyptic world. As for them, they will eventually destroy themselves. Upon hearing this, I lowered my eyes, hiding my emotions. Time is pressing. It's most urgent to stock up on supplies. As for them, I will never let them go. I looked up at the house inside. We definitely can't live there anymore. I thought about it. Selling the house would take too long. It's better to use the house our parents have in the suburbs. It's just that the house is only simply renovated, but at least it's in a good location, and the occupancy rate isn't high. I quickly conveyed my idea to my husband. After thinking for a while, he agreed. There's no better choice at the moment. As for this place, I won't let them have it without a fight. In the apocalypse, according to their habits, they probably won't need me to act. They'll destroy themselves. I was preparing to install this camera here. My husband held my hand and it trembled slightly. It was a long time since he had refused to speak. I knew he had agreed. Now that we've made the decision, we won't waste much time here. I picked up my phone. We still have a week. I will book the tickets for my parents first, lied about missing them, asked them to come here, and went directly to the house where they would stay. I looked at the phone screen. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want to argue with Joe the pig. I just submitted my resignation. I don't have time to find an excuse for such a long leave. I picked up my phone and called my parents. My hands trembled involuntarily. I am an only child. During the end of the world outbreak, at first I could still contact my parents. The 2 elderly people were very worried about me and wanted to come to my place while it was not too serious. Later, communication was cut off, and we lost contact. We young people are struggling so hard, let alone the 2 elderly people. Their fate can be imagined. I took a deep breath, scattered the messy thoughts in my mind. This life, I must protect them well. The phone rang, and when I heard their familiar voices, my voice still couldn't help but choke. Mom's anxious voice came from the other end of the phone. What's wrong, daughter? Did Victor bully you? Dad suddenly raised his voice through the phone. I can already imagine it. That old man would stretch his neck and wish to be here right now. Daughter, did they bully you? Dad asked anxiously. I rubbed my nose, still with a stuffy voice. No, I just miss you, Mom and Dad. I'll book tickets for you. Will you come today? After comforting them for a while, I said there were no other problems, and then I hung up the phone. I sent them the confirmed train tickets. My mind seemed to stop thinking. Suddenly, I woke up with a start. I grabbed my phone and ordered insanely on various apps. Fragile vegetables and frozen foods were not in my consideration because the end of the world started and power outages would soon follow. These foods could not be preserved. Ham sausages, vacuum-packed foods, cured meats, radishes, potatoes, cabbages, winter melons, onions, sweet potatoes, and laver are the ones that can be stored for a long time. I thought that in a few days we would no longer be in this community, so I directly chose home delivery. As for what happens later, I snorted and let my good mother-in-law experience it herself. My husband rented a temporary warehouse near the community where my parents lived. After all, the scariest thing about the end of the world is not zombies, but human nature. The immediate priority now is for my parents to come over. Then I contacted the property management, saying that we were preparing to move back home and needed to renovate. After reporting to the property management, I placed more orders. It's a new development, and since my mother likes to grow vegetables, I specifically chose the 32nd floor with a large rooftop when buying it. After that, I followed my husband to contact the community property management again, asking the community to keep the resources for our renovation later. They even used the excuse of renovation to buy some cement, sand, and red bricks. Since we were pretending to be renovating, we naturally needed to be more convincing, so we asked the workers to move the things upstairs. I gave them a red envelope as a thank you to the renovation workers, saying that I would notify them to come for the work in a few days. I also went to a warehouse supermarket and bought a lot of rice, flour, and cooking oil. All of them were moved upstairs under the guise of renovation. In the middle, we met other tenants who saw us carrying a lot of packages. I pretended to bump into my husband unintentionally and said in a soft voice, "It's your fault. I always told you not to live with Mom, but you insisted, and now you're kicked out." My husband rubbed his nose and consoled me properly, because some sand had spilled out of the bag he was pulling. He offered a cigarette to the other side. The man who was originally cold-hearted accepted the cigarette, and his eyes showed some sympathy. After all, the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law has always been a big problem. I smiled at the two of them and said that we would finish the work as soon as possible, and asked them to be more understanding during this period. The woman on the other side smiled, and I couldn't help but feel relieved. My husband and I moved the things upstairs. We bought a lot today, and we still need to move them tonight, so as not to raise other suspicions. At 3 in the afternoon, my husband picked up my parents from the station and brought them home. Seeing my parents, I could no longer contain my anxiety, hugging my mother tightly, feeling her warmth, and my mind finally calmed down. My father was glaring at my husband, who was awkwardly explaining, and I couldn't help but tug at my dress, saying, "Honey," with some grievance. I led my parents to sit on the sofa and revealed the post-apocalyptic news to them, as the events to come would also require their involvement. Hearing that I was pushed out of the door by my mother-in-law and eaten by zombies, my mother's eyes turned red, and my father looked furious and was about to go out to confront them. I quickly calmed them down. My father looked at my husband with a murderous gaze, and my husband fidgeted nervously, looking at me for help. I studied my parents. Now was not the time to deal with them. The most important thing was to survive. I explained the plan I had prepared in advance to them, and in the end, we decided that the four of us would go separate ways. I would go buy non-perishable food. My mother would go to the market to buy seeds, seedlings, and household paper towels, sanitary napkins, etc., and my father would go buy water for the city. Yes, electricity and water are the most basic living necessities. Husband Victor went to buy clothes and bedding, and put the items in a nearby rented warehouse first. Although the cameras here are just for show, to be safe, we decided to destroy them with radiation first. We will move the items in during the early hours. The house is a 2-family unit with a 3-bedroom, 2-living-room layout. However, for us who need to store a large amount of supplies, this space is obviously not enough. Moreover, when the apocalypse comes, human waste will also need a separate space. I turned my attention to the neighboring house, and that afternoon I contacted the property management. The landlord, upon learning that we were the adjacent landlord, readily agreed to our rental request. The next morning, we contacted the property management and signed the contract. There are 6 days until the apocalypse. My parents are staying here temporarily, and we went back to our marital home and continued buying various things on different apps. When I once again pushed my cart past the community gate, the old security guard couldn't help but greet me. "You've been running back and forth so much this morning. You're almost moving the supermarket into your home." There were also 4 or 5 other residents watching me, and I knew I had attracted attention. I smiled slightly, with a warm expression. It's not that my brother-in-law's family is coming, and my mother-in-law specifically asked me to buy more things. My brother-in-law's family doesn't have a good reputation, mainly because of their mischievous child, who always gets into conflicts with other children here. Many times I had to bring gifts to clean up their mess. Everyone understood, and didn't ask any more questions, but looked at me with a bit of sympathy. I found these situations quite pleasing. Maybe now they are just curious, but when the apocalypse arrives, this attention could bring unforeseen disasters. In the apocalypse, human nature is the most terrifying thing. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but want to see what the scene would be like when my mother-in-law and my husband's sister-in-law's family faced the condemnation from the neighborhood residents. The house has already installed hidden cameras in the past 2 days. The next few trips were quite noticeable, but the security guard didn't ask any more questions. I went to the supermarket a few more times, and it felt like I had bought enough. I went to a farther and larger supermarket with my husband. My husband went first to park the car, and I directly headed to the clothing section. My husband didn't buy everything, so I still need to buy more underwear, underpants, socks, and other undergarments. I will save them for later. When the water is cut off, it will be difficult to wash clothes. So I need to have enough spare. Also, various windbreakers. Now it's still summer, but it's uncertain if the temperature will be abnormal later. Last time, things died off in the early stage, so now I can only be prepared in advance. Food is stored for 2 years, according to the country's capability. Even if it's difficult, as long as we survive the early stage, the country will surely come to save us once it recovers. I went to a large warehouse store and bought various kinds of canned food, canned luncheon meat, canned braised pork, meat, pork, mutton, beef, chicken. Since we have solar panels at home, we must buy some meat, and we can eat it sparingly. Instant noodles, sausages, self-heating food, compressed biscuits, white vinegar, rock sugar, white granulated sugar, lollipops, glucose, dairy products. Take some, thinking that there may be power outages and gas outages later. Also took some self-heating hot pot, spicy beef packages and various instant rice. Ordered several boxes of heating pads on some software, just in case, but some express delivery is slow. So it's better to go to a large warehouse supermarket to buy for peace of mind. Take some Fujian noodles. The noodles are very fine, can be cooked with boiling water and are good for the stomach. Take more barrels of cooking oil, flour, rice, 8 treasure porridge, mineral water, bread, spicy sticks, and also take some indispensable happy water for fat boys. Took some common vegetable seeds on the way. My husband also ordered some telescopes, drones, fire blankets, folding pots, flashlights, slingshots, and marbles, as well as door stoppers, and more importantly, fire extinguishers, high-power flashlights. In case of power outages, candles and lighters will also be needed. Think of something and write it down in the memo. And also didn't forget to tell my father to buy some solar panels. The older generation all have some skills, and they can generally repair small appliances. Installing solar panels would certainly not be a problem for them. Moreover, the rooftop is surrounded by a fence, so nothing on top can be seen from the outside. I called my mom again to ask what they had bought at home. After thinking, I headed towards the household supplies section, buy some sanitary napkins, wet wipes, soap, sanitary napkins, hot water bottle, cotton quilt, electric blanket, heating pads, pajamas, and hand sanitizer. Gas is also the most essential. About a week into the apocalypse, water and electricity would start to be cut off. We also need to prepare gas cylinders. These are purchased separately, and there are very few in the city. However, it's also necessary to buy some solid fuel. Gas cannot be stored in large quantities, as it would be too dangerous. In the future, we can only rely on solar panels and solid fuel for cooking. Thinking about this, I pulled my husband towards the electrical section and took 5 or 6 electric stoves. Also get some mouthwash. Basic hygiene must be maintained. There will be no dentist to treat tooth problems in the apocalypse. Dad bought solar panels, a set of tools for repairing electrical appliances, and 2 chainsaws, military shovels, and axes. Mom bought a lot of seeds and soil, then went to the pharmacy to buy some household medicines, but it's not enough. The second day of the apocalypse countdown. This is my last time going out. I went to the pharmacy, bought medicine for colds and fevers, anti-inflammatory drugs, and medicine for the stomach, various vitamin pills, medical alcohol, gauze, iodine. I bought everything I could, then went to nearby pharmacies to buy some more Band-Aids, iodine, cotton swabs, thermometers, fever patches, cold medicine, alcohol, anti-inflammatory drugs, antidiarrheal medicine, ibuprofen. I bought everything I could, although I bought a lot. The pharmacy staff didn't ask anything, not like what people say on Shihu. Nobody came to ask. Everyone is just a worker. The staff isn't the boss. They just want to make sales. The pharmacy staff had a happy smile on her face. This week's sales target was secured. Thank you for coming. Take care, she said. With a smile, I turned around and looked at her, but I kept my mouth shut. How would others believe a stranger's words without experiencing it? They might think I was crazy. My parents went out again and brought back some beans, several big bags. My father also bought some soundproofing panels, one-way privacy film, and monitoring systems to install in inconspicuous places, and didn't forget to get blackout curtains. Looking at the full room of supplies, I finally felt a bit more at ease. I looked at my husband, who saw me and walked towards me, taking my hand and saying, "Let's rest for a while. We've been running back and forth these days. I'll massage you." I gave him a small smile and opened my phone, which was full of messages from my mother-in-law these days. I told my husband we went on a trip, but he only replied to them a few times. Looking at the surveillance footage, I had left some perishable fruits and meats. Watching my nephew running around on the sofa, my mother-in-law looked proud, saying how great my grandson was. My sister-in-law sat silently on the side playing with her phone, while my husband's younger brother, Linhui, was lying on the sofa with his feet on the coffee table. Don't forget to order my mother-in-law to cook. I'm starving. The sister-in-law opened the refrigerator and couldn't help but complain. Mom still says brother-in-law's family is so rich and generous. But the fridge has nothing in it. She then glanced at the mother-in-law and rolled her eyes. The mother-in-law looked at her eagerly. Isolde, you can rest assured, once they come back, I will make them more responsible. Our little June has been losing weight these days, she said, looking at the fat big grandson with affection. Hurry up and cook. There's nothing left at home, and they didn't go out to buy anything. The mother-in-law quickly bent down and apologized humbly, then went down to buy some vegetables and rice. But not much. Lin June saw this and couldn't help but frown. Mom, you only bought this little. Who is it for? The mother-in-law bent even lower. Brother-in-law said they will be back tomorrow. This is enough for us to eat for these 2 days. Once brother-in-law comes back, I will let him go buy. Xiao Jun saw that the grandmother didn't buy chicken legs and started jumping around. Grandma, I want chicken legs, and I want cola. Go buy for me. Watching the couple on the monitor who ignored everything, the grandmother said she would go by again, and Xiao Jun finally stopped jumping around and continued playing on his phone. Good daughter, it's time to eat. Hearing my mom's voice behind me, I did a somersault and stood up. My husband still had his hands in a massaging posture. I smiled at him and pulled him towards the dining table. Oyster sauce, lettuce, steamed fish, potato strips, braised pork ribs, all are my favorite dishes. Eating while talking about the next plan, Victor swallowed his food and said to me, we'll go out again later. We need to go back to bring the rest of the things in, to give the property management a false message that we haven't moved in yet, just in case someone keeps an eye on us. We will come back in the evening, and then block the exit with bricks and cement. My parents hesitated. Are we not going to inform anyone? I looked at my parents and said seriously, in the apocalypse, the first to be killed are the do-gooders. In the apocalypse, the most important thing is to be cautious of the neighbors around us, to be safe. I pulled my dad and mom to watch some popular zombie movies and TV shows. Mom and Dad couldn't eat a thing from the beginning, but later they could even discuss the plot. However, they still decided to let the people in their hometown know about the recent influenza virus, indicating that they should stock up on food. There's nothing else we can do. The village is far away, so the spread is not so fast. Most families have some seeds and stored food at home. Moreover, how could people who have not experienced the apocalypse believe such a ridiculous thing? They could only remind people. My husband and I have been discreetly using masks to remind people online, and many people have insulted us in comments. I quit the account, for it's hard to persuade a dead man. The end of the world countdown is 16 hours. That afternoon, when the crowd was the largest, our family drove out of the community. I greeted the people in the community. Uncle Cyrus, we're going to move the remaining furniture. There's a lot. We'll be back later. I asked for the access permission. Uncle Cyrus smiled and handed it over. That night, we didn't return until 11 o'clock. These days, we've been moving things from the underground garage under the cover of darkness. My whole body aches, but seeing the full supplies, my heart finally felt relieved. Mom has been gathering a lot of information from the old people on the square these days. Our building, we are on the 32nd floor. The floors below, from 26th to 31st, are still empty. On the day of the apocalypse, I remember it was at 8:40 in the morning when the apocalypse began that day. It was because of my mother-in-law's phone call that they said they would come over to our place these days. It was precisely because of a call from my mother-in-law that day, saying they would come to our place in the next 2 days. I was supposed to prepare some things, and because of this, I had an argument with my husband. Therefore, we couldn't leave on time. 3 days after the apocalypse, they came to our residential area, and Sebastian was holding an axe that he had gotten from somewhere, stained with blood. Because I couldn't bear to, I opened the door and let them in, but I didn't expect it to be like inviting a wolf into the house this time. I really want to see how they can get along without us. 1 hour before the apocalypse, my mom and I were organizing supplies, while my dad and husband used chains and door blockers to lock all the stairwell passages above the 26th floor, and then added another layer of thick chains at the elevator entrance and fire door on the 32nd floor. We piled up cement and sand that my dad had bought, and built a wall of bricks. We also placed other heavy objects, so the elevator is now unusable. This adds another layer of security, just for peace of mind. If it weren't for the strict supervision of the property management, I would have bought several more trucks of cement and bricks to enclose us inside. But so far, this is all we can do. However, the floor is now sealed off, so even if someone later finds out there are people here, they won't be able to get in. The door blockers on the 6th floor, plus the brick wall and heavy objects on the 32nd floor. Each bag weighs dozens of pounds. Pushing them is exhausting. The 32nd floor would be our last line of defense. If it really came to that, the knife and chainsaw my father had prepared would come into play. Moreover, Zombies in the apocalypse are extremely sensitive to sound. A loud noise would surely attract zombies, even if it didn't. I would find a way to bring zombies in 10 minutes before the apocalypse. I looked at the time, at 8:30. I stood on the balcony covered with privacy film and looked down at the people moving back and forth on the road. At this time, children were going to school and office workers were rushing. I didn't say anything downstairs, and my parents were also tense, listening to the sounds outside. The house had added soundproofing cotton. As long as we didn't make any big movements, we wouldn't have to worry about anyone knowing our presence. Around 8:40, I heard a sudden collision sound from the opposite side of the road, and below the residential area, through a telescope, I saw a young woman covered in blood, staggering towards the residential area. There were also people gathering to watch, approaching the girl, and then a loud scream was heard. The woman bit tightly onto the middle-aged man's neck, and blood spurted out. Those around were stunned and tried to pull them apart, but were caught and bitten by the woman. Looking at the man lying in a pool of blood, no longer showing any signs of life, he started convulsing. The people behind came forward to check, and found that the man who had been completely silent just now stood up in an unbelievable posture, his head hanging down, his body stiff, and rushed towards the living people to bite them. The apocalypse arrived as expected. Unaware people were infected one after another, while those who realized it ran home as fast as they could. Screams of agony filled the air above the residential area, and the smell of blood spread throughout the neighborhood with the wind. Except for the young person who was bitten at first, the rest were the elderly with slow movements. Mom and Dad lifted everything outside the residential area, their legs trembling slightly. My husband and I helped Mom and Dad sit on the sofa. My parents kept calling their friends back home on their phones, and I didn't interfere, as it wouldn't have made much difference for us now. At this time, my husband's phone rang, and when he took it out, it was his mother. My husband took a deep breath and answered the call. A frightened voice came from the other end of the phone. "Son-in-law, where are you now?" My husband had a blank expression and spoke calmly. "I'm getting off the highway now. Come back quickly. There are a lot of monsters in the residential area now, by the way. There's no food at home. When you and Sliance come back, remember to buy some food. Also, Xiao Jun wants cola and oranges. Remember to buy more when you come back." My husband's fingers were white from holding the phone. "Mom, are you really my mom? You never thought about how dangerous it was. How am I supposed to go back?" Mother-in-law raised her voice. "Okay, now you've married a daughter-in-law and forgotten your mother. Huh, I raised you with great effort, from a baby to a child. Now it's so dangerous outside. You don't come back, leaving me, an old woman, at home. Do you want to watch me starve to death? I raised you with great effort, and this is how you treat me." The nagging voice of the mother-in-law came through the phone. Seeing my husband's vacant eyes, I reached out and held his hand. My husband looked at me and said to the phone, "Stay quiet at home, and I'll come back as soon as possible." Saying that, he hung up the phone and took out the SIM card. I tightly held my husband's hand. My husband pulled me into his arms, buried his face in my neck, and after a while, pretended to be calm again. His eyes had been a bit red before. Not long after, I heard sporadic gunfire in the distance. I sighed, but this level of firepower was not enough to control the situation. There were police reinforcements, but the infection spread too fast to be controlled. Moreover, many people thought that infected people were just sick, and no matter what, they couldn't bring themselves to harm their familiar family members and friends, which caused more infections. At this point, everyone realized that the zombie apocalypse in the movie had become a reality, and in order to survive, they had no choice but to take up weapons to fight. Also, many people were bitten or scratched, and those with hidden wounds went home, some of whom lost consciousness before they could even get home. People who wandered in the corridor, thinking that returning home meant safety, many died just in front of their own doors. Soon, the usually safe building also began to faintly echo with agonizing screams. All TV channels were taken over by the country, broadcasting emergency news. The host calmly announced the official notice: "The origin of the virus is still unclear. Please stay at home and wait for rescue. The country will not abandon any citizen." At the same time, mobile phones also received text messages from official sources in various regions, asking residents to stay in isolation and not to contact any strange people. The property management of the community was also counting the residents. I pretended to be panicking within the community. The property management of the community at 3201. I tapped on the screen. "We are still on the way. We haven't arrived at the community yet. Is the community still safe? We should be there in about half an hour." There were other people who were specifically made aware in the group who also came forward with a look of sympathy. "You're really unlucky. If you had moved your things yesterday, it would have been better." After 10 minutes, I sent a desperate rescue message in the group: "Help, there are monsters outside. We are almost at the community. Can you help check the situation at the community entrance?" Seeing the various replies in the group, I did not send another message afterwards. "That's enough. Just pretend we were away on the way," and everyone assumed we weren't at home. "From now on, we need to be more careful." Dad built a water trough on the rooftop, And also built a dry toilet next to it. It's not needed now, but we will definitely need it. Later, because of the strong stimulation, I didn't have an appetite all day. I just had a little porridge and gave the parents some melatonin, and the old couple quickly fell into a deep sleep. My husband and I sat on the balcony looking at the outside of the community. The dim lights covered the area, and we could barely see people with strange postures wandering aimlessly on the road. There are rescue requests everywhere on the internet, and the government has been urging people not to go out. Some attention-seeking bloggers were live-streaming outside with their selfie sticks. Following them are groups of zombies, and some fitness influencers are teaching people how to kill zombies. A bloody scene is displayed in front of everyone, and the official has not banned these live streams. At this moment, people need to accept the current reality and learn some self-defense skills. Some influencers, having received tips, become bolder in making noise towards the zombies, attracting more zombies. Through the screen, I watched the zombies crowding outside the window behind the blogger, and I felt a chill in my heart. Many people also said not to make too much noise. Someone asked, "Is the blogger's window strong?" One of the yellow-haired bloggers was still showing off on the balcony, looking at the continuous donations in the live stream. His face was full of smugness. He didn't notice that there were already quite a few zombies gathering outside, climbing on top of each other. Until he saw the live stream prompt, the yellow-haired blogger became panicked and tried to find a place to hide, but it was already too late. A large number of zombies rushed into the room, and the live stream could only hear the blogger's heart-wrenching screams. My husband and I looked at each other and turned off the phone. I turned on the phone's monitor, watching my mother-in-law and others frowning and looking at the empty fridge and kitchen. My good nephew kept crying and making noise. Looking at the remaining food, this meal, except for the big grandson and son eating some, the daughter-in-law ate a small portion, and the mother-in-law could only look at the leftover food and swallow her saliva. I still added a little water and drank it after boiling, watching my mother-in-law take out her phone and make calls, trying several times, then making another call. A second later, my phone rang, and I didn't answer. I watched her make several calls, and finally she gave up. A few days later, I received a notice about water restrictions in the community. Although basic living water can be guaranteed, I saw my mother-in-law and others constantly anxious. I couldn't help but think that now the community members would probably come to me soon. Nowadays, young people don't stockpile food, they mostly rely on takeout. After a week, they would probably be out of supplies. Sure enough, someone in the community mentioned me in 602, asking, "Can you sell some of the food you stored to me? I'll pay 5 times the price. I'll pay 10 times. Can you give me a few packs of instant noodles? My child has been hungry for several days. Can you give me some rice?" I didn't respond to any of them. I watched as the people in the group changed from polite requests to shouting and cursing. In WeChat had a few messages. "Science, can you give me some rice? I'll pay a high price. There's no food left at home even if adults don't eat. The children cannot withstand it." It was the family next to us. I looked at them, but didn't respond with a single word. In the previous life, when they were pushed out of the door, they had already asked the neighbors for help, knocked on all the houses, but no one opened the door. Now they hope to get help from others. I looked at the continuous messages in the group, exited the group chat page, and curled my lips in a cold smile. 2 days passed, and I saw the mother-in-law and others becoming increasingly anxious, listening to them say that the mother-in-law should go out to find food. The mother-in-law looked to her younger son, Linhui, who did not look troubled. "Mom, Xiaojun is growing. I can't do anything about it." I tapped the screen and sent a photo of the meal from yesterday. The mother-in-law's phone rang, and when she picked it up, her expression lit up with joy. Sebastian and his sister-in-law looked enviously at the picture I sent, and the mother-in-law said, "Science, where are you? Mom has been hungry for days. Why haven't you come back yet?" Or, "Where are you? Mom is going to find you with your brother." The nephew looked at the abundant food in front of him, his eyes flashing with greed. He sent a voice message with the mother-in-law's phone, showing an unbecoming oily tone for his age. "Auntie, where are you? I'm so hungry. Can you give me some food?" The mother-in-law couldn't help muttering. I said they were selfish. They must be somewhere eating well, while we go and find her. Sebastian's eyes lit up. He urged the mother-in-law to ask where we were. Outside the house, there was a loud knocking on the door. The people inside nervously looked at the door. Outside, a young man's voice said, "Open the door." The people inside didn't move. Seeing no response, the person outside shouted, "If you don't open the door, we will break it down." Victor looked through the peephole and asked, "Who are you?" A sharp and unpleasant voice came from outside. "Before the apocalypse, your family bought so much stuff. Now that the apocalypse has come, why don't you just give us some of it as help?" The grandmother couldn't help but speak. "We don't have any food here." The door outside was knocked on again and again. "Open up. Do you even know if there's any food inside?" I saw Science pulling several carts of things with my own eyes. "We don't have any food at home. You guys better leave quickly." The grandmother shouted loudly to the outside. 2 muffled sounds came from outside. Fortunately, the door was strong. The grandmother saw them smashing the door and scolded them, the people outside. smashed the door a few times, but failed to open it. They were also afraid of attracting the attention of the zombies, so they had to leave. The people inside felt relieved when they saw this. I raised an eyebrow. Now the apocalypse had just begun. People still had concerns. Some families still had supplies, but in a few days, it might be. I occasionally looked down at the zombies wandering below, and saw my parents taking out their phones to contact relatives and friends. The countryside was still okay, and it wasn't that serious now, but the cities were not so lucky. After several days of silence, after we had our meal, I turned on the monitor as usual and saw a few shadowy figures outside the corridor, holding weapons in their hands. Inside the room, the mother-in-law opened her mouth to curse. Obviously, they had been harassing them for several days, but none of them had managed to open the door, which had given the mother-in-law a lot of confidence. However, this time, they miscalculated. The leading strong man, after making a show of courtesy, saw that they did not respond and took his axe to start chopping at the door. After several hits, the door started to cave inward, and the grandmother and others, seeing this, became instantly frightened. They began to plead with them to leave. The people outside would not let it go easily. His voice was hoarse, saying again, "If you don't open the door, I'll cut it down." Victor looked through the peephole and peeked out, just as he met the eyes of the person outside, which scared him back. The voice from outside came, and Lynn, we feared that they would tear down the door, putting them all in danger. He spoke in a low voice, saying, "We really don't have any food. I'll open the door. Don't hit it anymore." He opened the door carefully a little, and the people outside rushed in, pushing him aside. Watching as they entered, he shrank his body and muttered in a low voice, "We really don't have any food. Our house is out of grain." The neighbor's family looked at the four people. "Just the four of you. Where are the people of this family?" The old woman's voice was barely audible. "They are not here. You should look for them. They just sent me a picture. They must have food." Saying that, he held up his phone. A young man couldn't help but say, "What's the use now? You don't even know the address." They searched the house, looking at the remaining little bit of rice. The leader of the group was about to take the rice. The old woman saw this and hugged the big man. "This is our last food. If you take it, we really won't be able to live." The big man looked at her with a fierce gaze, and the old woman withdrew her hand awkwardly, only able to watch the four people take everything left in the house. Watching the people leave, the grandmother sat on the ground and couldn't help but cry. "What am I going to do now?" Sebastian's eyes flashed with a cruel look. "Mom, for your grandson, you have to go out and find food. Otherwise we'll all die here." The grandmother trembled as she walked inside, and Sebastian pushed his mother out of the house. Seeing the scene, I turned on the sound of the home monitor. "My dear mother-in-law, enjoy it well." Hearing the sound, several people couldn't help but look around, and found the camera on the shoe cabinet. Mother-in-law, with a fierce look, "I knew you weren't a good person. You already knew there would be monsters, and you threw away everything in the house. Where is my son? Let Victor talk to me. I don't believe he can just watch his mother die." I looked at my husband. His calm voice showed no emotion at all. "From the moment you decided to kick us out of the house, I no longer had a mother." Sebastian pretended to be obedient. "Brother, where are you? I'm going to find you. Now that the world is in chaos, we should unite and stick together." Victor snorted. "No need. You just stay there and take your chances. Whether you live or die is up to you." Seeing his tactics fail, Sebastian pushed his mother out of the house. "Mom, go find some food quickly." Seeing her son being pushed out, Lark was frantically knocking on the door outside. Seeing no response, she could only gather her courage and walk down the stairs, stepping into the direction of the lower floor, watching her disappear from the monitor's range. However, not long after, a series of urgent footsteps approached, and the mother shouted for help, with a few zombies following behind her. I saw Lin tightly pressing against the door, and no matter how the mother-in-law cried for help, the door in front of them never opened. She hurriedly ran upstairs, and due to her nervousness, she fell down in her panic. The zombies behind quickly rushed over, and she desperately stretched her hand forward. What appeared before her was the scene of her pushing her eldest son and his wife out of the door, and the ears were filled with heart-wrenching screams. She became expressionless. Her struggling hands dropped down, and 2 lines of tears flowed from her eyes. A few days later, the zombies were wandering around the hallway. What was once a safe building was no longer safe, and everyone was more cautious in their survival than before. Sebastian heard the zombies' growling sound, and Xiao Jun, a bit scared, moved closer to his mother's side. They tightly covered their mouths, afraid of making any sound. My husband and I watched them struggling to survive on the other side, watching Sebastian's eyes red with hunger, staring fiercely at his wife. A few days later, checking the monitor, there was no one in the living room, but there was an argument sound from the bedroom, followed by a loud, ear-piercing scream. My husband and I looked at each other, our eyes flashed with understanding. In the apocalypse, people's hearts are unpredictable. The horrifying scream and the smell of blood eventually attracted the attention of the zombies outside. A large number of zombies were pounding on the door, and the strong door eventually couldn't hold Hearing the cries for help from the monitor and the frightened shouts of a child, my husband took the phone from my hand and turned it off. During this period of observation, people in the community kept trying to go out to find food. Some came back, some never did. Maybe they left this place. We lived a life of eating and observing outside, going back and forth between 2 points: my husband, my parents, and I watched the gloomy sky. And I somewhat crazily described a beautiful life after the end of the apocalyptic world. The days passed very slowly. There are not many residents in this community. At the beginning of the apocalypse, there were requests in the group to exchange supplies. At first, it was still a harmonious scene, but later it completely fell into chaos. 2 months into the apocalypse, the community group was no longer the warm and friendly place it once was. There are also people with unclear minds, who at this point still openly tell everyone that they have supplies at home. I have a memory of this family. It's a couple, and the one who sent messages in the group was their son. She has always been quite rebellious. Seeing her classmates struggling, she took photos of the supplies at home to show off to them. By the time the couple found out, it was too late. That night, through the window, we saw people being thrown from the building across from us, hearing the distant cries of help and curses. My husband and I looked at each other, realizing we needed to be more careful from then on. Later on, more and more people tried to break out of the residential area. Some succeeded, while others were devoured by the gathering zombies before even leaving the area. 5 months after the apocalypse broke out, there were very few zombies left around the residential area. Some followed the cars that ran out, and some were lured away by noises from outside. At the same time, a group of people organized a team in the community, recklessly looting others' food, and there were even some who ate people. During that time, people often fell from the upper floors. It was unknown whether they were thrown down or committed suicide out of despair. Without moral constraints, the darkness deep within human hearts was completely unleashed. 9 months into the apocalypse, on this day, while watering the vegetables on the upper floor, I heard the sound of car horns. I quickly crouched down and quietly observed the surroundings. From a distance, I saw a group of people in military uniforms arriving in a jeep. They were shouting through a megaphone outside, "We are the military. If there are any survivors, please come down. We will take you to a safe zone." I hurried back to the room and saw my father and mother with surprised expressions on their faces, preparing to open the curtains. I rushed over in one step, stopped them, looked at my parents seriously, and pointed down with a tone. "They are not the military." Through the telescope, I observed that a dozen men in military uniforms were holding guns, but their posture was particularly strange, not resembling soldiers at all. I handed the telescope to my parents, and upon seeing it, they couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. My husband and I exchanged a glance, and we both understood that these people probably had ill intentions. I just hope the survivors in the community aren't so naive. We quietly opened a small gap and carefully observed. We were on the south side of the community, and we could just see what was happening downstairs. After hesitating for a while, I thought no one would come down, but I still saw small groups of people coming down with backpacks. I felt a bit sad in my heart. Perhaps they also knew that they might not be government people, but after so long since the zombie outbreak, there was no food left at home, and they were caught between a rock and a hard place, with no choice but to take a gamble. I also saw some elderly people with children slowly leaving the building. Perhaps these elderly people really believed they were government people. Believing this was a chance of hope, I watched as the group grabbed the supplies, left the women and strong men behind, and took the elderly and children to get on the vehicle. The crowd suddenly became agitated, but we couldn't hear what they were saying. After a gunshot, a figure collapsed into a pool of blood. The zombies that were attracted were dealt with casually, and they scouted the surrounding area. I saw them take a package out of the car, and soon after, I saw them set up a large pot. They started cooking right there on the ground. Among the crowd, some people pulled out a few women from the car and started touching them inappropriately. Seeing this, I felt a deep sorrow in my heart. The man in charge was hugging a young and beautiful woman, his hands not staying still. I put down my telescope and couldn't bear to watch anymore. Until the afternoon, I saw them dealing with the corpses on the ground and pointing at the buildings. A sense of unease arose in my heart. The next day, as expected, I saw the group searching each floor one by one. My husband and I exchanged a glance, and for the next few days, we took turns keeping watch at night. They searched the floors quickly, and within a week they arrived at our building. My husband took out a drone and carefully sent it down, watching them start from the first floor and sweep through the building. 2 days later, this group had reached the 24th floor. My heart was completely gripped with fear. Through the drone's transmission, I heard the man with the floral tattoo curse, "What a lousy residential area. What we found here isn't even worth the effort. Older brother, calm down." A middle-aged man approached and bent down to flatter him. "This is a new neighborhood, and the occupancy rate is not high. This building is a newly delivered one. Let's go check the next few buildings. There are only about 10 households in this one above that are all unoccupied." There's one family that was supposed to move in, but they haven't moved in yet. Their house is completely empty. I saw them moving out." The tattooed man spat on the ground and kicked it. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" The man didn't dare to get up directly. He stayed on the ground, his voice trembling. "I told Griffin." Griffin said not to miss anyone. The man named Griffin stood up. "Brother, I was thinking maybe we missed someone. I didn't know if what he said was true or not, so I didn't tell you." Shameful. Griffin looked at the man lying on the ground and helped him up. "Okay, we're brothers. Let's follow your rhythm to search," glanced at the upper floor, and said to the tattooed man, "Are you still searching here?" The tattooed man snorted. "What's the point of searching? Not even a single hair." As the sky grew dark, the group returned to their camp where they were staying. My husband and I were both drenched in sweat, and both of us showed relief from surviving. However, they didn't let their guard down. The next day, they headed straight towards another building. It seemed they had given up on our building. After all, there were only a dozen or so people living in our building, and they were very scattered. The middle-aged man was the property manager here. Seeing their actions, my husband cautiously sent out the drone, and the property manager pointed at that building, seeing a group of people with fierce eyes. I continued to go upstairs. The people below said something, and the few of them turned around and left. With the property management who knew the community well, they searched faster. I couldn't help but feel worried for the people in that building. I heard the sound of a fight from the drone from time to time, which meant they had succeeded again. I didn't know what I could do. I was with my husband and his parents discussing what to do, even if they didn't come to our building. We definitely couldn't let them stay here any longer. The best way was to drive them away. The next day, I don't know what madness these people had, but they returned to our building again. The leader at the front stroked his beard. He always felt that there was someone in this building, so the others had no choice but to follow his orders and go upstairs. There was no one on the 25th floor, and no one on the 26th floor either, until they went towards the fire escape on the 26th floor. The sound of chain friction was heard. That man pulled up his lips. They were hidden pretty deep. "Brothers, it seems there's a big fish here. Break it open." Seeing their movements, our hearts were all on edge. We didn't expect this day to come. I immediately asked my husband to use the drone to search for zombies. The area around the community had already been cleared, but there wasn't a single zombie looking at the empty street. I told my husband to fly the drone further. This time, it collided with another drone. The air seemed to pause for a moment, and the drone transmitted a message saying that the two families could work together. They were from another building, and during their home renovation, the two apartments were connected, with a hidden door in between. Entering it would make the house feel less spacious, and this is how the family narrowly escaped. However, the house space is not large enough, and they will eventually come up. If they wait for the other group to search them out, they will surely be in trouble. If the other group takes the food from our house, we will only be able to wait for death, and they proposed that our two families join forces. Their family has 5 people, and they also have a few rabbits. They can use blood to hang on them to lure the zombies from a distance. I just happened to have my period these days, and I quickly thawed the chicken and hung it together with the blood, using the drone to fly low around to attract the zombies. Mom also used frozen meat to make blood water. Imitating the process, it flew a few hundred meters forward, but still no sign of the zombies. I controlled the drone to continue exploring further and finally found signs of zombies about 1 kilometer away. The destruction along the way was right in front of me, which explained why they were so reckless. The zombies from the surrounding residential areas had all been cleared away, so they had been so brazen these few days. I said a quick greeting to my mom, and another family followed us from a distance, one in front and one behind, heading toward the zombies. Watching the zombies slowly approach the residential area, the person left below was still moving on the woman, and when the woman saw the approaching zombies behind her, I couldn't help but feel anxious. I was afraid she would make a noise and wake them up, but I also couldn't bear to see her end up as a pile of bones. The woman had a look of relief in her eyes, but the man didn't have time to react before the zombie bit his throat. Another person pushed the woman next to him toward the zombie and quickly ran upstairs. The woman tightly held his arm, and the blood stimulated the zombie, which quickly rushed toward the man. Seeing him covering his wound, he staggered up the stairs. Hope he can give some strength, and after being infected, take all the beasts on the upper floor with him. The people with axes downstairs have already reached the 31st floor, and with their axes, they smashed the locked doors. Staring straight ahead towards the 32nd floor, the father was holding a military shovel, and the husband was holding a chainsaw, staring intently at the video from the drone. The person with the wound has already climbed to the 16th floor. Through the drone, I saw the man with a pale face, and he pulled his clothes back down to cover himself. Several people in the fire escape were still desperately smashing the brick walls, which had become as solid as a fortress after months of drying. Not to mention the many heavy objects behind the brick wall. I was holding an iron rod, and my mother was boiling sugar water in the kitchen. The sugar water has a low boiling point, and if it touches the skin, it would at least cause a burn. Moreover, there is no doctor now, and basically, a severe wound is equivalent to a death sentence. That group of people was still struggling to break the wall, and the man below was trembling on his feet, walking towards them through the drone. We saw the short man rushing up. The man with tattoos looked unfriendly, pointing behind him as if wanting to say something, but his body twitched, extremely strange. The others noticed the scratches on his hands and looked terrified, and a zombie growl was heard from behind. The tattooed man stabbed the infected man, and looking at the stunned group, he shouted, "What are you staring at? Grab your weapons." The man killed one zombie after another trying to come up, and said to the man in red with a bag, "Hurry up and open the door." We were closely watching their movements, seeing the man in red taking tools to open the door. Our hearts were in our throats. If they really made it in, the consequences would be unimaginable. Fortunately, the zombies were faster, and the zombies behind grabbed the exhausted man's wrist and bit down hard. A scream was heard from the drone, and we couldn't help but sigh in relief. Through the drone's observation, no one was alive, and we finally felt relieved after being worried for several days. We had a simple communication with the people behind and across. Their apartment is on the 26th floor. The access control was damaged, and there were some zombies wandering in the hallway. Fortunately, they had made their door and soundproofing good enough, and they locked the fire exit after going out. As long as we don't make a lot of noise, it's not a big problem, and we have also attracted quite a few zombies away. A mom went to the rooftop and picked a few leaves of the well-growing lettuce, and used the drone to send some to that family. Everyone has been keeping some worries in their hearts. These days, some of us have been getting a bit irritable, so Mom went to get some mung beans to make a mung bean soup. The mung bean sprouts we sent a few days ago have also grown well. Dad is still growing lettuce, Shanghai greens, small tomatoes, and leeks on the rooftop, covering them with plastic film to prevent them from freezing. During this period, everyone has gained 10 or so pounds because of not moving much. And now everyone has agreed to vote that each person must exercise at least half an hour a day, gradually increasing the exercise, even if not for weight loss. Maintaining physical health is necessary. Moreover, even if we are temporarily safe now, it's not certain that there won't be risks later. So Dad also reinforced the fire exit. I can't remember how long it has been, watching the snow falling outside the window. It's snowing, and without realizing it, so much time has passed today. We were having hot pot at home when an urgent voice came from the window. A drone was hanging a note saying, "Xiaobao has a fever, do you have medicine? Exchange with eggs." Seeing the eggs next to me, I called my husband to take out the medicine and also sent some warmers over. The child has a weak immune system, and the fever lasted for a week, and the little one finally recovered, and we couldn't help but feel relieved. It has been 1.5 years since the apocalypse broke out. Our food consumption has not even reached 1/3, and the vegetables are also keeping up. It's also thanks to the 2 elderly people, and the vegetables occasionally sent by the family across the way, and we also give them some supplies. Some of them are even made into dried vegetables, and we use water very sparingly. Fortunately, my father has built a water tank on the rooftop. The rainwater we collected is filtered and boiled, enough for washing dishes, doing laundry, and taking a shower. The family across the way consists of 3 people plus the grandparents. All of them are high IQ individuals, and the grandmother is a university professor. Maybe because the elderly like to grow some plants at home, they were able to rely on these tools to be basically self-sufficient after the apocalypse. Plus the mutual help between our 2 families, everything is still going well. My mother occasionally chats with the family across the way, and every few days gives them some food. For every person, there is a hope, according to my mother, because the old lady across the way likes to stockpile supplies. That's how they've managed to last this long, but there's not much left now. Later on, we continued to send a lot of things over, but they really didn't have anything else to exchange, so they put a pair of gold bracelets in the basket. After several exchanges, we finally accepted them. We still have plenty to eat, and every so often, both families exchange supplies, mainly eggs, from our observations. Besides us and that one family, there's no sign of other people in the community. It's possible that only we are left, or they might be hiding. We still speak in hushed tones, trying not to make any noise, so as not to attract zombies or draw attention from others. The second New Year after the apocalypse, we made a big pot of stir-fried wood ear mushrooms with cured pork, and another dish of green vegetables, and one of stir-fried mung bean sprouts. We also made a soup with seaweed. Mom also made a filling with green vegetables, wood ear mushrooms, and cured pork. This was the first time we ate dumplings all year, because we had very little flour left. Happy New Year. We raised our glasses to celebrate that we were still alive. After having dinner, we had just finished cleaning the table when we heard gunshots and explosions outside. The sound of a helicopter and a loudspeaker was also heard in the air. Comrades, we have developed the zombie serum. Please hold on. We will be dropping supplies in the next few days, and we will come to rescue you gradually. People in need can hang bright-colored clothes by the window. Believe in the country. We will send people one by one to get vaccinated. The country will not abandon any of its citizens. We locked gazes, and Mom, excited, was searching for clothes in the house, hurriedly taking out a red coat, which was her favorite, one she never liked to wear normally. We stretched the clothes out and hung them on the window. And the helicopter saw them and flew towards this direction. The helicopter opened its door, and we waved at the helicopter, seeing a young face. The young man in military uniform saw us and smiled reassuringly, his voice strong and resolute. Please don't go out. We will eliminate the zombies one by one and come to administer the medicine. The country has not abandoned you, and will not abandon any citizen. We nodded vigorously, afraid they couldn't receive it, and shouted at them, confirm, we have heard. They continued flying towards other places. In the following week, Mom was always radiant, and everyone was full of excitement, waiting for the dawn to come. We waited for a week and finally saw them coming to administer the vaccine to us. The zombies downstairs were cleaned up one by one, seeing the layers of protection and the personnel coming to administer the vaccine. Their eyes sparkled with tears. In the apocalypse, many people had died at the hands of their fellow citizens. We struggled to move the clutter aside, making sure none of us had been infected or injured. They smiled, bowed to us, and behind them, the white-clad medical staff took out a syringe from their suitcase. Watching the clear liquid injected into my arm, I asked them about the situation outside. They recounted the information they could share, and this battle was won very hard. Afterward, Mom warmly invited them to sit down and have a meal, although they repeatedly said it wasn't necessary. They couldn't resist Mom's enthusiasm. When they left in the end, they still reminded us that they were now in the stage of large-scale elimination of zombies. But please don't go out. They have led the zombies away from the vicinity, but just to be safe, let's wait a bit longer. The victory is within sight. I looked at my husband, and we led them to the next room. Seeing the relatively ample food, I smiled and said, I hope this can bring more people hope. After the young soldier reported to his superior, they left some for us, and the rest they donated to the country on our behalf. Watching their retreating figures, our family relocked the door. When they left, they fixed the door downstairs. We reinstalled the door blocker and waited at home in peace for the country's instructions. The victory is within sight, and we will not cause any trouble for the country. In the following days, we saw planes flying by occasionally. The planes used noise to attract zombies towards the suburbs. A series of explosions were heard in the distance.